Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the April 23, 2018 Committee of the Whole meeting of the DeKalb City Council. Prior to roll call this evening, for anyone who would like to speak to any member or any items on our agenda, you're more than welcome to fill out a speaker request form. And we'll call you at the appropriate time. We again would like to have the roll call, and I'm going to ask Deputy City Clerk Ruth Scott to do the honors. Thank you.
Jacobson?
Here.
Finucane?
Here.
Marquardt?
Here.
Fagan?
Here.
Noriko?
Here.
Verbic?
Here.
Favor? Smith?
Here.
7 present.
There are no speaker request forms that I've received for folks who would like to speak to any item that is not on the agenda. However, we do have one individual, Cassandra. Cassandra, where are you? Yeah, if you'd like to, Gene, I think what I'm going to do is have public participation since we only have the one item. You can speak, and then we'll have Gene speak, and, unless you'd like to respond to whatever Chief Lowry does.
I can go first.
Go ahead. Identify yourself, please.
Cassandra Camp from the Student Association. Good evening. My name is Cassandra Camp, and I am the Legislative Director of the Student Association. On behalf of the students of NIU, I thank you for your efforts to create a safer community. I would like to make it a point that the Student Association is not against initiatives that improve the safety of the community and our students. However, we do have a few concerns moving forward as you pass Phase 3 and 4, both phases that will directly affect the students. First, we would like the City of DeKalb to consider partnering with NIU for parking permits. Students pay at least $92 for their annual parking permits to park on campus, and an additional $25 on top of the cost of parking in apartment complexes leaves students with a tight situation and an empty pocket. By partnering with NIU to make both parking permits passes interchangeable, you will not only cut the cost of living in the DeKalb area, but also make the students feel part of the DeKalb community by accommodating to our requests. The students requesting for an interchangeable parking pass would follow the same procedure as other members of the DeKalb community requesting a parking pass. They would have to demonstrate a current driver's license, registration and insurance, and proof of residency on one of the affected streets. Second, the Student Association requests for a grace period following the passing of Phase 3 and 4 as the semester begins in the fall of 2018. A grace period of at least 1 month following the beginning of the academic calendar allows the students to become accustomed to the new parking policies across DeKalb. This grace period will consist of warnings, but the police would not document within the system until the grace period ends. And finally, the miscommunication between the students and the City of DeKalb has become concerning. For a while, it was unclear which NIU representative of the City of DeKalb and the DeKalb Police Department talked to you about the Safe Streets Initiative. We are very grateful that the city has reached out to Melanie Magara and the Student Association, but we feel like there could be a better process of communication. Northern Illinois University is not one homogeneous entity. Although the Student Association represents all students and tries to relay as much information as possible, we cannot move all major efforts alone. The DeKalb Police Department would have more efficient communication with the students by reaching out to multiple groups on campus, including the Student Association. One option would be reaching out to the Greek councils and attending chapter meetings to discuss the initiative. Another option would be providing information to the resource centers on campus, which touch a large proportion of students on campus that might not be represented in other groups. The Student Association and the students of NIU appreciate all the hard work the City of DeKalb and our community's diligent law enforcement are performing, and we hope you consider our recommendations for the following phases. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassandra, and we appreciate the efforts of the Student Association at NIU. Thank you very much. I don't believe anybody else is registered to speak to this item, so I'm going to call on our police chief, Gene Lowry, to address the one consideration that we have tonight, and that is our Safe Streets Initiative, Phases 3 and 4. Gene?
Thank you, Mayor, Council, staff, and community and student associations and students representing here tonight on behalf of NIU. What I'd like to do tonight is give you a brief review, promise to be brief, and further respond to any questions you may have or any other questions that may arise from the audience that are here today, from the audience members here. So let's begin. Phase 1 and 2 updates. Basically, where do we sit with Phase 1? Phase 1's been implemented. Phase 1 has gone fairly well without any thunderous pushback or incidents involving its actual implementation. Like Cassandra said, we did implement a grace period when we implemented Phase 1, and we intend to implement a grace period with any of the phases that are implemented. We've already noticed anecdotally some positive changes in the neighborhood in regard to some of the behavior we begin to witness as the season warms up. So we're looking optimistically to see what the results are over a period of time. And we'll keep the council and the community posted on those results. Phase 2 update. Phase 2, as you know, was passed by this council at the last meeting. The situation that exists with that is we've got a slight delay doing some ordering in regard to some of the actual stock that goes into creating the signage and things. As each phase goes through, I know that Public Works is trying to get the orders arranged, and there are many things that are in the queue. We expect that to be implemented in a few weeks once that stock has been received by the city and once it's been put together. We'll follow the same practices as before. We'll get the signage up. The signage will be appropriately flagged with streamers and to provide attention getting for the signage. We'll make a host of postings, not only in social media, but with press releases to the community about it, both in the print media and radio media. We'll also coordinate our efforts with NIU to ensure that our liaison with NIU is up to speed on everything, and that what we've come to depend on is that voice within NIU helps us get the word out to all the students. It's just a matter of fact that it's extremely difficult for an outside agency to come in and respectively contact the significant amount of diverse organizations on campus that are student organizations. So we've really relied on student leadership and NIU administration and staff to help get the word out for us, and we'll continue to do that. Once we have the implementation phase ready for Phase 2, we'll be moving along again in the same fashion as we did before with Phase 1. 2-week grace period, and warning period, posting of notices, and the like. Items moving forward for phases 3 and 4. We have a variety of them, but I think these are positives, and many of these have come about as a result of input from many in the community, but primarily focusing on some of the student concerns. We're working diligently with our information technology department in regard to online permitting. Our goal is to have an online permitting process as part of the visitor temporary parking in certain areas of phases 3 and 4 and other phases as well, to accommodate people and accommodate their needs. This is also in conjunction with the already well-established, going on years, if not decades of past practice of what we term alibi parking within the city. It has been come to this council's attention on a variety of occasions that there's some concerns about permitting and the costs of permitting. We've done a preliminary breakdown of that throughout the course of this process. We're waiting for what our actual costs are in regard to online permitting. But for Phase 3, when we bring it to council, we'll be bringing a breakdown of what costs are. But the costs go well beyond what it costs to purchase a permit, what it costs to have a staff member break down, a fraction of what that hour is to process it. The other costs are going to go to things like signage, what it costs for us to get an online permitting system put together, and all the other costs. Our preliminary indications indicate that with the cost of permits as they are, it would take us almost 10 years to recover the cost of getting the program up and running with hard costs in other areas. Signage in particular being the most significant cost, and a cost that wasn't anticipated by Public Works because it wasn't within their realm to say, hey, this is going to happen for sure, until it was passed by council. And I might have to have some interpreter here so I can read this a little more effectively. NIU collaboration and parking options. As late as today, I've been in contact with NIU officials who have been very collaborative and very informative in regard to this matter. There are already options in place. The big one is that every parking lot affiliated with NIU after hours is free parking, period. So that does create a lot of options within this mix, especially for areas like the nursing school and like the parking lot on what I call the North Grant parking lot, just north of the new residence halls. That evolution will also contain things like bus service that NIU provides. The Husky Safe Line. I spoke with Chief Phillips today. He indicated that they are also looking at creating additional stops, and he wanted to assure everyone, especially the students, though, that those stops are stops, but it's not written in stone. If they see a bus and it's out there and they want to ride, their drivers are instructed to pull over the side. If they get flagged down, pick them up. So there's some other consideration in the works. I'm not going to take that away from Chief Phillips. More to follow. I think some other things that are coming out of this, items moving forward, are things that come under code, the Unified Development Ordinance, and the actual permitting itself. But the one concern that we're seeing, in especially code and subletting, is we're already starting to see, as a matter of fact, it cropped up in phase 1, when a party came to us asking for 6 on-street parking permits, and it was later determined that the building that they were in was a residential building for once a single family was over-occupied. It had been sublet out to an extreme. This was something that was very predictable, not with this specific case, but with what we knew going into this process, that subletting in and of itself in all areas of this program of Safe Streets, the parking component, subletting is an issue. And it's an issue that I think we can deal with. The next category is safe route, septet, lighting, cameras, and police. So when we talk about concerns regarding DUI, concerns in regard to walking, involving students, we really look at what safe routes is intended to be. And I think there's been an understanding of it, but maybe not to the extent that we need to. We're going to keep emphasizing that throughout the process. But 3-pronged Safe Streets initiatives. Proactive policing measures already underway. Parking regulations currently underway. Phases 1 and 2 approved. Moving forward, we'll be bringing 3 and 4, with 3 coming in May. We look at what the city has already done. Public Works has already done some tree trimming in regard to this matter. Along our proposed safe routes, for example, Russell, the mayor and Commonwealth Edison have coordinated a huge LED lighting project in this neighborhood that will probably light that neighborhood up as if it was daytime all year round. We might think we're in Alaska for 6 months out of the year. And we're continuing to investigate a methodology, funding, and the like outside the box with what we could do to get a public safety camera system, especially up along those areas and other key areas in this area, on both sides of phases 3 and 4, where we have our most problems, or have the most problems. And again, the last component of that is the police component, a greater police presence when we can. As we move on, one of the key things we've been doing to put some data in front of you in regard to phase 3 and 4 is we've been doing some parking surveys. The parking surveys include this. They include actual police officers going out at night, doing visual surveys of lots, and reporting back on information or things they see. But the other thing is, something we did that was a little bit different, was we this morning deployed a drone into those neighborhoods and took some photographs, which we're going to show you in just a little bit. Phase 3, quick reminder, phase 3 is west of Annie Glidden Road. It's a 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. parking ban, tow zone. Available parking meets the Unified Development Ordinance requirements with visitor parking available in private lots. Now, I say that with a degree of asterisk associated with that comment. And what I mean by that is this. We're going to investigate what we have through our GIS department with actual on-street parking and compare that to what's in the UDO with specific apartment buildings to ensure that there is available adequate parking. Again, you can see the numbers in regard to crime. They speak for themselves. Calls for service in phase 3 in 2017, 3,421, 94 property, 72 drug, 8 weapon offenses, and 21 violent crimes. That's phase 3. Phase 4, east of Annie Glidden, commonly referred to as Greek Row. Again, a no parking 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Established resident permitted parking in that area. We know that most of that area, but not all of it, most of that area is not in compliance with the current UDO. So we're going to have to make some parking accommodations. The public safety numbers are up there. Calls for service, 4,459, 159 property, 135 drugs, 17 weapons offenses, and 22 violent crimes. Again, the data's been presented multiple times to you, but those are the next 2 phases we're bringing to you, phase 3 in May, hopefully. Let's talk about these parking surveys. I know this is hard to see, but I really would like the audience to try and focus on this. These were taken beginning around 5:30 this morning. It was taken with a drone. In a series of parking lots, we're just going to identify by generalities. They kind of go from the darkest to the lightest. You know, the light changes fairly quickly then. But this shows a sample on a day of what parking looks like. You can see a parking lot with ample parking available off-street. Again, phase 3, west side of Annie Glidden. This is the Regent neighborhood, starting to get a little bit lighter. If you look at the parking, a little bit hard to see, ample parking available, and you can barely see a little bit of what's catching up on the street that kind of goes off to the right of the screen. It makes a 90-degree turn. You're seeing actually per capita space more parking on the street than you are in the parking lots. So what we're seeing is, and I can only give you anecdotal data at this time, in calls for service in this area, we're going back through our computer-aided dispatch system to try and collect data regarding calls involving situations that involved subletting complaints. What we're finding in this area is a larger amount of people being involved in incidents demanding police service that are disputes about where they can park because they have sublet offline of their lease. This is a Varsity neighborhood. So when you look at this morning, a huge amount of vacant parking available within the private lots over there. Again, another sampling from Varsity. Again, still some parking spots available in this lot. I mean, this one says it all. This is the Echo Park neighborhood this morning. This is probably occurring right around 6 a.m. Now remember, this is one day, one point in time. The drone capabilities are a little bit limited as far as what it can pick up at night, but we will try to deploy it during other times to bring some data back to you. Again, the Regent neighborhood, ample parking. Again, this is west of Annie Glidden in phase 3. Fotis Echo Park neighborhood. This is Aspen, way out on the west end, just north of Hillcrest, right where Hillcrest comes to an end. More than ample parking available. Varsity neighborhood again. This is Pappas. You can see some familiar sites of certain buildings that are in that area. Hate to be redundant, but ample parking in that lot. Another shot of the Pappas neighborhood from a different perspective. So as I finish this up, I'm not saying someone's not telling us the truth. That's not it at all. Somewhere between where we sit as we move these ordinances forward and the reality of what parking is available and how private property owners are processing their parking is something to be addressed. But at least the data from what we've seen on the street, some of the complaints we've handled, and now what we've seen with our on-site driving lots at night and putting up the drone, this is what we're seeing. There is ample space available. So from the community input perspective, it's been hugely beneficial throughout this process. We've actually changed course on a variety of occasions from the very beginning on where we went with this. I want the council to know, I think you'll be surprised at what the costs are in regard to permitting, but when you look at the cost of permitting over 10 years when we would hit the break-even point, that's about the same time when new signage would have to go up. My understanding is that Public Works and the signage crew really tries to work on a 3-year cycle throughout the city on the replacement of certain signs. And of course, as signage goes, sometimes it gets claimed as a trophy and sometimes it gets damaged for a variety of reasons. But nonetheless, those have to be replaced and taken care of. So from a money-making perspective, it's a non-existent proposition. I want to continue this dialogue with the university and every stakeholder in the community. The neighborhoods have been great. And as you reflect back on the phases, 1 and 2, how the maps changed once we had community input, even some of the actions of the council as we've had community input regarding Lauren Drive in that neighborhood, we've course corrected. And I don't think at this stage of the game, any of it's really hurt us. If we continue to see the positive components that we're seeing or the positive reporting early on in phase 1, I think we'll see the same in other phases. I am concerned about phase 2 implementation from the perspective of community expectation. And what I mean by that is this. I believe the community has an expectation we're going to be getting that ramped up fairly quickly. I think it's going to take several weeks to get that squared away for the reasons I've already stated. So I want it to be clear to the community it's not forgotten. Well, there are some neighborhoods in phase 2 that are begging for it to be implemented right away, and my heart aches for them. The continuation of cooperation and collaboration are an ongoing process between us and NIU. We continue to monitor our landing page. We continue to address and course correct as needed. I don't have anything else in addition to say to you tonight. I would encourage any questions you have, or if there is any further dialogue from the community. I think this is a valuable time. I'd also like to announce that, I believe it's this Thursday, Alderman Finucane, we have a ward meeting we're hosting at the police department for the affected wards in this situation. So please, I'm asking the community, if you have a concern or you want to come out, we'll be there to kick that off. I believe our start time was 7 for that.
Double checking right now. 7.
7? So we've also gotten the word out with NIU and through social media and the like. So I know it's early in the cow for me to stop, but I'm sure you're real happy that I'm stopping to talk. Stop talking. Having said that, I would answer any question the council has or any comments from the community.
Yeah, before we turn it over to the council for questions or comments, Bill, what is the meeting on Thursday, and is that a ward meeting?
It is wards 1 and 2. We're going to talk about the Safe Streets Initiative.
Oh, good.
Particular to our ward. So Jean's kind enough to host us there.
Great, wonderful. Okay. Cassandra?
Am I allowed to ask questions?
Sure. Come on up. Time's on our side tonight, so.
So I have a couple questions specifically for the DeKalb Police Department specifically. So Chief Lowry stated how he was saying how the NIU parking lots have they have free spots during night, but I'm a bit confused on why they think that the NIU parking lots at night have anything to do with the residential lots, because as we said, it would be giving those parking permits to these residents who are living in these areas. Just like any other residents, they're just NIU students who are also paying for parking passes. So when we're asking for the making both passes interchangeable, it's not because we can't park in the NIU parking lots at night. It's the fact that, well, we would have to park in the parking lot and then somehow walk 25 minutes to our house if we wanted that pass. If, let's say, our parking lots are full at our apartment buildings, or we live on a house and we unfortunately cannot fit all of our cars into that building. So that's where we're coming from with the interchangeable parking pass. And we are confused about why the police department thinks that those lots at NIU on campus would have anything to do with the residents. And then my second question, it would be, what's the estimated wait time that they would do to give these students and these residents a grace period going into the academic calendar? Because we know that there has been a grace period implemented for both, but it's essentially and especially important when the students are coming in for the academic year who have been so used to just parking on the streets, and with all the hype that happens coming into college and starting new and fresh, it's going to be a lot to get accustomed to that, especially something that's never been implemented before. So my two questions were, why do the NIU parking lots have anything to do with the residents' lots? And then the second thing is, what is the estimated grace period?
Okay.
Thank you.
Gene, you care to address that?
I may have to have Cassandra remind me of what she just asked me. But let me address the NIU parking lots and from my perspective, so you understand from my view. I'm not saying the NIU parking option should supplant the obligations of the landlords and property managers on the west side of Annie Glidden. They have an obligation to provide parking in accordance with the UDO. And as such, if there are too many cars in that parking lot, there's a couple of things that may point out to us. One, there's too much subletting and they're allowing too many people to live in apartments in opposition to the ordinance and in violation of the UDO. Two, no one who lives west of Annie Glidden should have to walk to an apartment. The UDO provides 1 parking space per bedroom and 0.5 parking spaces per unit. As such, if I had a hypothetical 10-unit or 10 apartment single bedroom unit complex, I'd have to have 15 parking spaces available for that group. So I would say, in first part, if I'm answering you correctly, number one is, I don't believe the NIU lots are options to provide residents who live on the west side additional parking. They should have that already available to them through their landlord and as subject to their lease. All of the landlords that I'm aware of have a permitting process for their lots. That should be known up front when anybody goes in to sign a lease. And I think that is the essence of where we start to see some conflicts in roommate relationships, whatever that dynamic or situation is at that given time, is that when we increase the amount of subletting that's off lease, we're not only in violation of the regulations regarding that from a UDO perspective and an ordinance occupancy perspective, but we're also, from the landlord's perspective, in violation of that lease. So that should never happen, from my understanding. You may be able to tell me and educate me on how that could happen, and that would be helpful for us to understand, because that's a communication piece between us and the landlords. That's really important why those surveys we're doing with the drones start to put some texture to this. Did that help? What was the second question?
And then the second question was, what's the estimated grace period for returning from the outbreak?
So throughout this process, we've talked about a grace period of 2 weeks as we implement it. I didn't anticipate doing another grace period. I think that's a policy decision, and I would like to get some feedback from the council in regard to that as well. If we felt that was something that was important, I think it would be valuable to do. But here's the problem we face when students come back. in the fall. The level of activity, the level of crime, and in particular the level of violence, not by students, but by others that tend to migrate to the community during that time, puts us in a position where that's when we need enforcement the most. We're hoping that we constantly improve our methodology in regard to communication between us, the students, and NIU. So we have people geared up already. We've already had the discussion about orienting students not only at the beginning of this process as they return to school with the help of NIU, but also orienting them to, from my perspective, telling them who the bad property owners are rent-wise, rental property-wise, who are not standing up and doing the right thing by their properties, who have had a multitude of issues with the city. And letting them know up front, so they, as they enter into leases, they start to make choices and say, okay, well, if this certain property has X amount of complaints by the city, or with the city against a specific landlord, maybe this is a place where I shouldn't be renting. And I know there are so many variables in this, but money is a variable. Transportation is a variable. There's so many variables here. But if we at least get the information out, it helps in the decision-making process of the choices that are made early on by the students. And I hope, both of my kids graduated from NIU. I would hope that they would have had the information on the front end so they could have made a decision on where to live instead of being trapped in a rental property that was poorly managed, poorly maintained, and unsafe.
Yeah, from a student and city compatibility issue, I think that's just one of the things that we need to do. We need to communicate. We need to keep those lines of communication open. Cassandra, thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. I'd like to open it up now to council discussion. Alderman Jacobson.
Cassandra had one more question, Mayor, if that
Okay.
would be okay.
Could I just make one last rebuttal about it? I just wanted to end on about the wait period. I'm sure all of you have had multiple jobs in your lifetime, and let's say one time you had to wake up at 7 a.m. and you had to get to work at 8, or another time you had to wake up at 8 and get there at 9. But let's say you had to start waking up at 5 a.m. So you know that you have to wake up at 5 a.m., but it's going to take you a while to get accustomed to it and live a new lifestyle. It would be the same way for these students. We've been living this exact way. We've been parking on the streets, and it's been very natural to us. But it's also going to take some time for us to get accustomed to these new policies. Like I said, we're not against the policies, but we would like to be able to see that the DeKalb community would work with us on giving us a grace period to get accustomed to these new policies so that we can work with you to make the campus and the community a safer place. Thank you.
And you'd like those sort of to align to the end of the semester and the beginning of the semester, from what I understand.
Yeah,
right?
so just for when phase 3 and 4 are passed, we would like a month going into the fall 2018 semester to get accustomed to this these new policies. And we're not asking for like an entire semester. We're just asking for some time for students to get used to this, for us to continue to get the word out, because we will have new students next year, and we'll have transfer students, and we will continue to have new people who are moving into that area that might not be familiar with that. And so it's really important to continue from what we have now going into the fall, just to have that period to where we can get used to it.
Okay. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Alderman Jacobson.
Chief and I have gone back and forth on some of these issues. Again, looking at these two specific areas, the reality we're seeing is that the 7th Ward properties west of Annie Glenn have plenty of parking, and that it's very likely that the reason they're not parking in the lots is because they don't want to pay a fee to do so, and we are offering free parking. Knowing that we have plenty of parking by UDO there, and knowing that, again, there should be visitor parking, those might be conversations we may need to stimulate with the landlords to make sure that those spots are available especially, again, my worry is that residents that don't want to pay will park in those spots, claiming they're guests when they're actually residents. That's something, obviously, informationally, we have to figure out that hurdle to, and I think Chief is working on that. The reality of the major parking program in the Greek Row neighborhood, the biggest and really most effective group of the changes we're making are the fraternity and sorority houses. They are the ones that are significantly under UDO in terms of the parkability of those properties. Again, you're talking some of these properties have 35, 40, 50 members living in them with 15 to 20 parking spots for them. So I realize that's going to create somewhat of a crunch in that neighborhood. And I think that's, again, what we're looking at. To understand what's in place now, Greenbrier already has resident-only parking. We've already instituted that. We did that 2 years ago. We're already charging a fee. And there was no pushback by the students. There were some questions, and those questions I know were directed back to the PD to understand exactly where they can get those passes and how they can get those passes. But to claim $25 a year or 15 cents a day is going to break the back of a college student. If they can't afford 15 cents a day, they can't afford the gas or the insurance to put in the car. So I reject some of that discussion. I've had the discussion, again, owning buildings and managing buildings on Greek Row with my tenants, two of which have some of those parking problems and are parking out on Greenbrier. And they understand that there's going to be a change coming, and we've had that discussion, and they're trying to figure out how that's going to affect them. But looking out into the neighborhood where there are parking problems, again, being that Greenbrier already has instituted this several years ago, you're talking now Blackhawk and Kimberly and a little bit on Hillcrest are really the only buildings that aren't currently under this schematic now. And having that discussion, again, the houses on Blackhawk have access to a private lot next to Fanatico that one of the property owners rents very cheaply by the semester or by the year for people to use the lot. And it is basically, there's never any cars in that lot. Occasionally there's one. To understand that really the only crunch is going to be on Hillcrest and Greenbrier, again, those are things we can focus our efforts on to try to fix where that crunch may have to be moved to. When the chief is talking about NIU lots being open, those are for your guests coming into town. And I took offense to the last meeting we discussed this, when the former Speaker of the Senate made clear that she doesn't think it's appropriate to expect college kids not to drive drunk. That's offensive. That's ridiculous. The reality is we do expect our college kids to not drive drunk and to plan ahead and to organize transportation. 5 or 6 years ago, when we didn't have Uber service in this town and we didn't have cab service, I could see where it would be much more difficult and much more affecting those students. The reality is we do at this point. We have those abilities. We have a bus service. We have the Safe Line service. To hear and understand from my undergrads that I'm on daily contract with, why don't you use those services? Well, we don't want to be inconvenienced and wait a few minutes. We want to go now. And again, I understand that to a point. That's why I have a car. That's why I like to get around. I live in that neighborhood. I live on Edgebrook, and my lot has plenty of parking for the residents that live there. The times when it hasn't over the years are because they are over-occupying units. So when we're talking about single-family houses, or we're talking, hey, we live in a house and there's not enough parking, again, if there are under the designated 4 people living in those houses, there should be, in most cases, 2 garage spots and 2 driveway units. If there's not, or if there's more than that living in those units, that's something we have to address. I am certainly willing and able, especially at our meeting Thursday night. I hope the Student Association is there. I hope some of the councils step up, some of the individual groups step up and participate in those meetings. Again, I think we need to have a conversation specifically focused on Hillcrest, Greenbrier, and Blackhawk about where those cars and their guests are going to park. And there are some opportunities. We do have 912 Edgebrook. We do have the private lot across the street from Blackhawk. there may be some additional availability on Greenbrier for us to explore. Those are the residents that are really going to be affected, at least in my mind, as the program rolls out. As a secondary comment and a side comment, again, the reality was we didn't want to implement this during the school year for the specific fact that you don't want to mid-year create turmoil and create confusion. I think you said it best by the answer, lots of new students will be coming into that neighborhood next year. The transfer students, the exchange students, the new Greeks that are moving in. To start them with an amnesty effectively, again, it goes against accountability. When they're coming in, when they're new to the block, to understand the parking regulations for a month and then have them change mid-year, I think is rather confusing and is probably goes against what the goal would be to do. Especially understanding that, again, the groups being affected are fraternities and sororities, and they are not able to host events the first 2 weeks of the year. So there shouldn't be guests and visitors in those fraternity houses without violating NIU policy. And again, the student speaker made a comment last week, we can't expect our groups to follow our own internal policies. We can't assume or hope that they would end events by 1 o'clock in the morning, which would, again, not be affected by these parking changes. We can't expect that they're gonna follow the rules NIU set out. I reject those claims. I say that is, as an advisor, as a property owner, as someone who's been involved in that neighborhood for 15 years, that's what we endeavor to do every day, is to have them accountable and meet those expectations that are both being promulgated by the university and the city. And that's what it's our job to do. So, again, I find it somewhat offensive that the argument is saying, well, we just don't want to follow rules. We are willing to hear you. We are willing to listen to you. And again, that's not something you said tonight. It was something the speaker said in our last meeting here. Going forward, again, we have a meeting Thursday at 7 o'clock on Thursday night at the police station. We want you to be there. We want to start answering these questions. We want to start looking at how we can make it work for those that are really going to be affected. To pretend that all property owners or all residents are going to be affected, in reality, I think it is overblown. But there are going to be several. And I think it's important that we look at their individual situations, understand how many members or how many guests, residents are in that house, and where we can find, as a city, opportunities for them to park that are safe, that are well lit, that are convenient to these buildings, and will reduce the impact significantly so that it's not a problem going forward.
This is a process too, believe me. Okay, let's continue the conversation with the city council. Alderman Noriko.
I understand that, this really is a give and take process. And what I would be supportive of is a very brief amnesty period, kind of recognizing what Alderman Jacobson said, but also what, the students are putting forward. Rather than 4 weeks, 2 weeks, say. Give them a period to ensure that, the word has gotten out and word of mouth has circulated, and I still think that does a lot. But at some point, you have to pull the bandage. And, at some point, there will be people inconvenienced. But again, what's the greater good? But to try to address, concerns, if we take a look at a brief period.
Alderman Fagan.
Chief, you've met with Dara on this issue.
Yes, sir.
Are they prepared to be proactive when they rent out to students, to let them know what the consequences are on parking and what they have to comply with the City of DeKalb?
I have every indication. I did meet with the DeKalb Area Rental Association, for those who don't know what the acronym is, DARA, in regard to this whole situation, safe streets and everything that we're going through now. They pledged that they would help support the communication effort. In phases 3, we did some hand leafleting to get the word out. But we're also depending on crime-free housing to help us get the word out to specifically to property owners and managers to facilitate the process of getting that word out and getting their cooperation. I even spoke to them about my concerns regarding overpricing of parking permits for the residents. There seems to be some disparity. There's some similarity, but there is also some disparity. And I felt that if the membership of DARA, which represents really some of the best landlords in this
Yes.
community, would get to some commonality, not only for the benefit of the students in regard to pricing of private lot parking for the apartment they live in, that it would also assuage some of the concerns we have because it would get them in the lots. But yes, they have pledged to work with us.
Great, thank you.
And I think we have one other gentleman who wants to speak. Would you please come to the podium, please? Tristan, right?
Yes. Greetings, everyone. My name is Tristan Martin, and I currently serve as the current Vice Chairman and Director-elect of the Mass Transit within the Student Association. And I want to touch on the grace period that we were talking about specifically. So, first off, I don't believe that a 2-week grace period is going to be enough for students. Now, I understand the concern that Alderman Jacobson brought up about students not, new students coming in and having to adjust, with the 1 month and then have to adjust again after that. However, I do believe that the majority of NIU speaks on the behalf that they would enjoy a grace period, because I know that a couple of, obviously there are going to be a lot of incoming freshmen, incoming transfer students, incoming foreign exchange students, and I want to make sure to represent them as well. But the majority of NIU that has been here longer, I believe, would speak to that more, that they would enjoy having a little bit more of a grace period so that these people that have been with us can be retained by us in future years. Also, if the council decides to not do this, why not let students be able to, within that month period, hopefully have a month period, within that month period, use their student IDs to maybe waive the tickets. That way you're able to have a filter system, so students would be able to have the 1 month grace period if they were to get a ticket. And they would be able to give their student IDs to the police department so that these tickets aren't held against them. And you're also while simultaneously being able to shut off any non-NIU students that park in these areas affected by parts 3 and 4 of this initiative. Because by that, most of the crimes, from what I understand, have been by non-NIU students. Being able to do this would, like I said before, create a filter system. And the other thing, and I wanted to address you, Alderman Jacob, about the offense. I apologize on behalf of Speaker Wang for the offense that you received on that. I don't believe that her intention was to say that students should be driving drunk. I believe I speak for all students and everyone here in the DeKalb community when I say that everyone here strives to fight against drunk driving. I do believe that's an issue, and I think that we should work further with the City of DeKalb to take care of that issue. And I hope that through this Safe Street initiative, we're able to do that. Thank you, guys. I yield.
Thank you, Tristan. Any further comment from the council or yes, Alderman Verbeek?
Thank you very much for speaking up about a compromise to starting up. My concern, though, based on our data, is that there's a good reason for implementing this and not allowing a grace period. Chief, could you comment to that?
I think there's some really good reasons why. I think this all boils down to the permitting process. So, not that Tristan said anything wrong, or not that it's not worth considering, certainly is. The problem with that kind of a process is for the officers on the street, the operational issues it creates. So if we're dealing with a situation with a car that's on a street that we believe is part of some situation, we may not just cite it, we may be removing it if it's in a tow zone. So then there's going to be an expense incurred. And from an operational perspective, if we just limited it to a money consideration for the respective student involved in that situation, nobody's going to get towed, and I don't think it would be the city's responsibility to cover that tow cost during a grace period in that type of situation where you're trying to differentiate between students and non-students. It would be very confusing. I think what we should do is look at what options have been presented tonight, allow us to talk it over within the department, and come back to the council when we make our presentation on phase 3 to address some of our concerns. My biggest operational concern is once we implement and get an initial grace period underway and done, we would then be actively enforcing. And then all of a sudden, when the students return, we would stop actively enforcing and institute another grace period and start that whole process all over again. I think it's extremely difficult for the officers on the street to adjust. And the workload they have when students return to NIU, not because students are bad, they're good, but with all of the level of activity and demands for service we have, some of which are definite threats to public safety, we need to be operational at that time. I also believe that if we do a righteous job in getting the word out, and I believe NIU's committed to that as well, on the front end, that I think that we conquer that. But I don't want to close the book until we've given it some proper deliberation.
Yeah, and in closing our meeting this evening, I'd like to make a couple comments, if I may, myself. One is, for those of you who may be following some of what's on the screen, I would urge you to go to our city website and punch up the PDF that is part and parcel of the background information for the Safe Streets Initiative. This has not only some excellent verbiage as to what is involved in 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the Safe Streets Initiative, but there's also a map there, and I think it's an excellent way to educate oneself to that. Secondly is this. This is a process. This meeting tonight is purely informational. I think we've gotten 1 and 2 in terms of the phases of the Safe Streets Initiative off to a pretty good start. We need to work on 3. We need to work on 4. I commend Alderman Jacobson and Alderman Fanouken for having their ward meeting this Thursday night. We would hope that folks who do have an interest in the Safe Streets Initiative, especially in 3 and 4 phases, come to that. And let me back up. Safe Streets Initiative started with what? An address to make our community safer. And I think that is one of the goals that we have set forth, that we want to be a safe city, a safer city. And so while we realize that as we roll out these initiatives, nothing's perfect, not everybody agrees. We have, I think, taken a step backward on a couple of neighborhoods. I look at the Lawrence Street, University Drive area. Hey, we listened to those folks. What they said made sense. Hey, we did that. So I welcome comments, and I welcome comments even though they may not agree with what we have set forward. Because as I said from the very beginning, this is a process. Okay? Very good. Thank you, Gene. Appreciate it. We are not recessing tonight. We do not have an executive session of the City Council. I'd ask for a motion to adjourn the Committee of the Whole meeting.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. We are adjourned. City Council begins at 6 o'clock. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the April 23rd, 2018 regular meeting of the DeKalb City Council. Prior to our roll call this evening and the start of our City Council, I'd like to remind folks who would like to speak, and we have a number of folks who have already indicated that they would like to speak under either public participation or on a specific agenda item tonight, to kindly fill out a speaker request form. They're in the back, and give those to our Deputy City Clerk, Ruth Scott, who will get them up to me. I'll try to keep them in order. We try to speak basically in the order of the agenda and the order in which the request forms are given to us. So we welcome you here tonight. I'd like to ask our Deputy City Clerk, Ruth Scott, to call the roll of the City Council, please.
Jacobson. Fanouken.
Here.
Markwart.
Here.
Fagan.
Here.
Noriko.
Here.
Verbic.
Here.
Favor. Smith.
Here.
6 present.
Make the minutes reflect that Alderman Jacobson has arrived at the dais, and also just a note to those of you who may be watching or in the audience. I did receive a communication earlier this week, or over the weekend, frankly, from Alderman Tony Favor of our 7th Ward. He is out of town and will not be able to join us tonight. I'd like to ask our police officer who's on duty tonight, Jeff Weiss, to come forward to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Jeff?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jeff. Item C on the agenda tonight is approval of our agenda and any additions and deletions. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as published. Roll call.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Fanouken.
Yes.
Markwart.
Yes.
Fagan.
Yes.
Noriko.
Yes.
Verbic.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
7 yes.
There is one public hearing tonight as item D under our agenda, and that is, we are starting this public hearing at 6:08. The public hearing, 2018 Proposed Annual Action Plan for 1-year use of funds, April 1, 2018 to March 31, 2019, under the Community Development Block Grant, the CDBG program. Our Community Services Assistant, Joanne Rouse, will speak to this item. Joanne?
Thank you, Mayor Smith, members of council, and members of the community. This action plan under consideration is funded using federal funds granted to the City of DeKalb through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development under the Community Development Block Grant Program. The programs and activities that are described in the annual action plan are intended to benefit primarily low to moderate income residents of the City of DeKalb. The City of DeKalb seeks broad-based participation in the planning process for the annual action plan. Citizen input is necessary to shape programs that will provide the greatest benefit to the largest number of residents. A 30-day public review period of the action plan has been provided, ending with tonight's public hearing. During the course of the review period, the city provided the following opportunities for public participation. Public notice was published that advised the community of the availability of the action plan at various public locations within the community and on the city's website. A press release was sent to local media outlets to advise the public of the availability of the action plan and of their opportunities to make comments. And a 30-day comment period has been provided with the opportunity for the public to make both written and verbal comments. And comments are more than welcome this evening. Tonight, we are asking for your comments on the investment of CDBG funds in the following programs. Private property rehabilitation. This is a loan-to-grant program that provides very low and low-income property owners assistance with home repairs, such as a roof replacement, electrical upgrades, plumbing upgrades, window replacements, or heating improvements. The program also provides persons with disabilities assistance to make accessibility modifications to both owner-occupied or rental units. Housing rehabilitation of owner-occupied properties is used to reduce deterioration and support the revitalization of existing neighborhoods. The second program is public facilities and infrastructure improvements. The city budgets approximately 50% of the annual CDBG allocation to public facilities and infrastructure improvements. Funds are used to address deteriorating public services in low-mod income neighborhoods. Public services can include flood and drainage improvements, water line improvements, street improvements, and/or sidewalk improvements. Public services. Public services fund various projects and programs conducted by social service and nonprofit agencies to provide supportive services to very low, and moderate income individuals, families, and people with special needs who reside in the city of DeKalb. These services include emergency shelter, family stabilization, youth programs, supportive services, and transportation. Funds are capped at a maximum of 15% of the annual allocation. The final program is administration. Administration funds are used for overall program management, coordination, monitoring, and evaluation of CDBG programs. This activity is also capped by HUD and is funded at a maximum of 20% of the annual allocation. The action plan this year is using estimated funding that can be allocated to each of these programs. The numbers that are used in this draft will be adjusted when the annual allocation is issued by HUD. Due to recent delays on the federal level in the issuance of an approved budget, HUD allows grantees to create the annual action plan, hold the public comment period, and approve the annual plan based on estimated funding amounts. The amounts are then adjusted to reflect the actual allocation prior to submitting the final plan to HUD. The proposed funding amounts that we are estimating for 2018 are $400,000, which is in line with what the past several years' allocations have been. Private property is allocated $60,000. These expenses include both administrative and actual project costs for the program. In addition, there's a large carryover of $329,649. That includes a portion of unused funds from 2017 rehab, plus a large carryover of unused general administration funds from 2015, 2016, and 2017. These funds have been reprogrammed for use in the rehab program in 2018. Public facilities and improvements has been allocated $200,000 for the replacement of an aging street surface in a low-mod income neighborhood. $200,000 was allocated in the 2017 action plan and is being carried over and combined with the 2018 amount to complete one large-scale street resurfacing project. An additional $39,680 from fiscal year 2016 is going to be used to complete ADA accessible sidewalks in an adjoining low-mod income neighborhood. The 2016 project was completed in 2017, but due to the timing, we were unable to get the sidewalks done that year, so we've carried them into 18. The final two programs being funded are public services at $60,000 and administration at $80,000, and those are both within the HUD cap. So total funds available for this action plan are $400,000 in estimated new allocation for 2018, $569,329 in combined carryover funds, for an estimated total of $969,329. Council members and citizens are encouraged to comment on any aspect of the action plan. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I'll record any comments that are made.
At this time during the public hearing, is anyone in the audience wishful to speak to this CDBG report? How about City Council? Alderman Noriko.
Thank you, and thank you for all your hard work on this report. It was really detailed and actually readable.
Thank you.
Two questions. And there was an article in the Chronicle today about CDBG.
Okay, the article in today's
Was that-
Chronicle was actually about CSBG.
Okay, sorry.
It's
Okay.
a similar
Good, I'm glad
program,
that- yeah,
but it's a
okay.
community services block grant,
Okay,
and that goes
okay.
to community action agencies.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay, I was wondering what the tie-in was with this. Well, I'm glad
Well,
to hear
we
that
work
that.
we work with the same population,
Mhm.
and we do actually coordinate and refer back and forth and, assist, try to,
Again,
collaborate with
same
each
group,
other, but
okay.
it is a different program.
Okay, good. My other question, how are the opportunities to obtain these private housing rehab grant dollars? How is this publicized to the general public, to individuals who, would conceivably want and be able to use these funds?
The information regarding the grant program, including the application itself and the requirements, is on the city's website.
Mm-hmm.
In addition, I participate in local networking groups and share information with collaborations of other social service agencies within the
Okay.
community. I do speak to staff at other agencies to remind them that the program exists. I have participated in community events and resource fairs to try to promote the program. I would have to say, though, probably the biggest way that I get referrals is word of mouth.
Okay.
It seems like when I work on one house in a neighborhood, someone talks to a neighbor and they give me a call, or they know somebody who they think I should call, and so we do a lot of word of mouth referral.
Obviously one of my concerns is, these dollars are available. I want them to be used.
So do I. I think that as we move forward in the new year, we'll have additional opportunities to market this programming at greater depth, and also more staff time to actually do the rehabs.
And if we're aware of someone, or someone approaches us and says, who do I talk to? Are you the contact person?
Oh, yeah, I'd be happy to take the
Okay.
call.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from City Council? Hearing none and hearing no comments from our audience, thank you, Joanne. I'd like to close this public hearing at 6:17.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving right along, item E on the agenda this evening, special items or presentations and citizens' comments. Our first item is a very special one, based on something that happened this past weekend under Proudly DeKalb. Commendation of Kate Cardella for spearheading on Earth Day cleanup this past yesterday, April 22. I'd like to ask our Community Development Director, Joellen Charlton, to address this item on the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and community. Just very briefly, I want to take this opportunity to introduce to you a very special person in our community. What she has done for DeKalb in the last couple of weeks is a true representation of the term Proudly DeKalb. This individual, after reading about several issues being addressed in the downtown with regard to garbage and property maintenance, decided to do something a little bit differently. Well, actually, after talking to her right before the meeting, I don't think it's been that different for her, as it appears that she herself and her family have been routine people that take it upon themselves to do things that are helpful to the community and to make the community a better place. The mayor mentioned she, in a very short period of time, took that challenge and decided to put together a grassroots effort in about 2 weeks that organized many people from the downtown and many different residents and residents groups to get together and band together on a beautiful day, it was yesterday, to organize and put people's efforts together to clean up downtown. So I'm going to stop talking because she's got a much better story than I do, but she's my hero because I really hope people will take inspiration and do this sort of thing in our community because it was a really great thing. So I'd like to introduce Kate Cardella.
Hi. Sure. Thank you for having me tonight. I am a proud employee of District 428, and I know how it feels when social media blows up. So after Lord Stanley's was condemned for a minute, and there was a lot of chitter chatter on Facebook, I went on I went for a walk in downtown DeKalb, and I posted the pictures on the You Know You Might Be from DeKalb Facebook page, and there was a lot of chitter chatter. And my friend Scott McAdams said, well, why don't we do a cleanup? And so it's his fault that we did this, really. I can't take all the credit. So some more chitter chatter happened. It became Facebook official with an invitation. David Jacobson contacted me and wanted to help purchase supplies. I got connected with Cohen Barnes, and he rounded up the downtown troops, and we put this together. I had about 40 people RSVP, and we think 80 to 90 showed up. I'm going to have to give some props to Mother Nature because it was just an utterly beautiful day. And so I was welcome tonight to come and share some of the images. Just tell me which push. Okay. Okay, so this is all of the volunteers that showed up yesterday. Again, thank you, David. You brought like 20 very strong men to pick up the really gross stuff.
David.
Here we are gathering and chit-chatting. There are some of the supplies that David purchased, and Trixie from Gordon's filled in the rest. That kid is mine. Here are the bags that I put the shirts in that Sports of All Sorts made, and on the back we have all of our sponsors. Cohen wanted to do it kind of like a race shirt to give everybody props who helped. Lauren Woods at Cracker Jacks donated 10 $10 gift cards and 3 t-shirts to give away. And then the Gordon's bags on the left are the Butts bags. I'll tell you more about that in a second. Here's the space to the left of the hillside. And to say it was disgusting is an understatement. What about 15 to 20 people did in an hour is the image on the right, and truly remarkable. Here's the stairwell to the right of Herbal Embers. And I know that you can probably see the garbage is picked out, but it still needs a little bit of work down there. We got kids involved, families. Here's the entrance to the old Megan Morrison, which is swept, but still needs a lot of attention. This is all of the garbage that was collected just from the left of the hillside and the alley down to First Street, and I believe Van Buren Plaza. So Mr. Andy Ray was cool enough to contact me and say, hey, we'll help pick up the garbage. So we made a plan together. There were other garbage spots, and we basically said, like, if there was a garbage can on the outskirts of the town, to drop them next to the actual garbage cans that were standing, and then his crew would come about 2:30 and pick them up. I had a Girl Scout troop contact me, and I thought, well, God, we already have like 40 people. I don't want to have 20 Girl Scouts walking downtown DeKalb picking up cigarette butts and glass and stuff. So I contacted Dan Kenny and Cheryl Knack at DeKalb County Community Gardens, and they said we could go clean up there. So I sent the Girl Scouts there, and they did a tremendous job. Is that it? Okay. So I would just like to thank everybody that helped yesterday, and I definitely could not have done this alone. This was a huge group effort. In having conversations with the people that were there, one of the things that we discussed was the utter need for ashtrays. And I'm going to show you a very gross visual.
Oh,
all your fault.
yes.
This is what we picked up by hand. This is not what we swept up or gave up on picking up by hand, scooped up with shovels. This is by hand.
All cigarette butts?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, there's a Skittles wrapper right there. But I was going to count them, but I can't.
No.
Well, Kate, all we can do is say thank you very much, but in addition to that, stay right there. I'd like to present you with a commendation, and I'd like to read what this commendation says. This commendation is presented to Kate Cardella for spearheading an Earth Day cleanup on Sunday, April 22 in the city of DeKalb. Her efforts to clean up DeKalb's downtown area, along with many other DeKalb citizens, resulted in the collection of approximately 25 landscaping bags and 50 garbage bags full of debris removed from our fine city. Therefore, with the appreciation and respect of the people of DeKalb, Illinois, this certificate is presented to Kate Cardella. Kate, come on up again. That does proudly say, proudly DeKalb, doesn't it? We have count them, 6 proclamations this evening, and we try to shorten these proclamations up a little bit for the benefit of our audience. The proclamations in and of themselves are a tad longer, but we'd be here until 7 o'clock if I read each and every one word by word. Our first one is to proclaim Administrative Professionals Day, April 25, 2018. I, Jerry Smith, Mayor of the City of DeKalb, Illinois, do hereby proclaim April 25, 2018 as Administrative Professionals Day, saluting all of the amazing administrative professionals who positively contribute to offices within this community, as well as dedicating themselves to the administrative profession. And I'd like to ask our executive assistant, and tonight serving as our deputy city clerk, Ruth Scott, to come up and get this certificate. Ruth, you not only are receiving this certificate, you prepared it. Okay, item number C under this item on the agenda is Arbor Day. I, Jerry Smith, Mayor of the City of DeKalb, Illinois, do hereby proclaim April 27 as Arbor Day in the City of DeKalb and call upon all citizens to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. I urge all citizens to plant and care for trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. I'd like to ask our Interim Support Services Superintendent, Andy Rye, to please come forward. And Andy is the fellow that Kate mentioned that volunteered on the part of the City of DeKalb to pick up all those garbage bags the other day. And Andy, I commend you for receiving this proclamation for Arbor Day. Okay, thank you. Our next proclamation will be presented to our fire chief, Eric Hicks. I, Jerry Smith, Mayor of the City of DeKalb, Illinois, do hereby encourage all citizens to recognize not only our local firefighters, but those worldwide on May 4 and year-round for their courage, selfless service, and sacrifice. And Eric, would you like to say a few words to this?
Mayor, I want to thank yourself and the council for thinking of the fire department on Firefighters Day. You guys see me all the time, so I brought a couple of our finest here to accept this award. It'd be Lieutenant Jason Padlick and Lieutenant Brian Andrus. They're currently at Fire Station number 2 tonight, so they'll be accepting this for the fire department. Thank you. Come on up and get that proclamation, gentlemen. Thank you. Okay, I see. Ruth, you get another one here. The next one is Municipal Clerks Week. I, Jerry Smith, Mayor of the City of DeKalb, Illinois, do hereby recognize the week of May 6 through 12, 2018 as Municipal Clerks Week and further extend appreciation to all municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. Ruth, if you come up. Our next one is a proclamation for Public Service Recognition Week, May 6 through 12, 2018. I'd like to ask our interim city manager, Putty Hoppenstedt, to come up and receive this. I, Jerry Smith, as mayor of the City of DeKalb, Illinois, do hereby announce and proclaim to all citizens
that May 6 through May 12, 2018 is Public Service Recognition Week. All citizens are encouraged to recognize the accomplishments and contributions of government employees at all levels, federal, state, county, and city. Patty, would you like to make a few comments?
I would, Mayor. On behalf of all of the hardworking staff with the City of DeKalb, I'd like to thank the City Council for recognizing the many, many contributions that all of the departments provide and the services they provide to the residents of the City of DeKalb. So it's an honor to be receiving this on behalf of the employees of the City of DeKalb who make many sacrifices to ensure that DeKalb has the best quality of life.
Come on down and receive this certificate. And finally, Letter Carriers Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive Day, which is this year on May 12, 2018. And this we had last year, and it was so successful. I'm going to ask Carl Cron and his wife Claire to come up and receive this certificate. Let me just read in part what this proclamation says. I, Jerry Smith, as Mayor of the City of DeKalb, Illinois, do hereby proclaim Saturday, May 12, 2018 as Letter Carriers Food Drive Day in the City of DeKalb, and encourage the citizens of our community to support the food drive by placing non-perishable food items in or near your mailbox on Food Drive Day. Your letter carrier will pick them up while delivering the mail, and together we can all help feed our hungry. I'd like to ask Carl and Claire if they'd like to say any comments. Carl, you are a postal carrier. How could I tell that with that sweater, right? And Claire is part of our Environmental Commission, one of our hardworking boards and commissions here in the City of DeKalb. Would you like to make any comment before I present this certificate?
Yes, I am a letter carrier, delivering the Elwood Historic District. Hunger is really a problem within everywhere but, say, in DeKalb. Right now, over 60% of the students within the DeKalb school district are eligible for either free or reduced meals. This food drive comes at a critical time because it comes just before school lets out and when a lot of the students no longer have access to the meals at school. So, say we ask everyone to please help out this year, and say 100% of the food collected in DeKalb stays in DeKalb. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Come on up and get a certificate here. Okay, item H, Annie Glidden North Revitalization Plan Task Force update. I'm going to ask either Alderman Fanouken or Alderman Jacobson to make a report.
I'm going to defer to Alderman Jacobson this evening.
We held an open house about a week ago at the Westminster Church over just off of Greek Row to present the preliminary plans that Camaros has started to draft based on the revitalization plan for the neighborhood. It wasn't super well attended, partially I think in part because of the weather and how miserable it was outside. But there were several residents there that asked some really good questions that I think we're following up on and looking into. But we are making progress, and I know as the subcommittees meet and our upcoming meeting of the task force as a group, they are ready and prepared to start giving the council some of their input and some of the things that are coming back through their subcommittees. So I will certainly look forward to seeing that.
Again, I thank Dave Jacobson from our first ward and Bill Fanouken from our second for being our council liaisons and trying to keep that Annie Glidden North Task Force and the subcommittees that we have on track.
Jerry,
So,
if I may
yeah,
add,
sure.
Dave mentioned the task force. That meeting will be on May 7th at 6 p.m. at the Community Outreach Building,
Okay.
County Community Outreach Building.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, May 7th.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along, item number 2 on our agenda this evening, presentations. I'd like to ask External Affairs Manager of Commonwealth Edison, George Gallrap, to please come forward. George is going to fill us in on the installation of advanced metering infrastructure, AMI, smart meters. George, welcome.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, Aldermen, city staff, fellow citizens of DeKalb. Dave Doherty's here. Dave is the director of AMI. He'll speak on this. I'll just introduce him just after a brief comment on our Dusk to Dawn light program that we have coming to DeKalb. I met with the mayor, Tim Holdeman, the police department. ComEd has a program out there that we're going to replace the current ComEd-owned but city-rented Dusk to Dawn lights at no charge. So we'll be replacing those with LED lights. It's about 60% savings that will be driven back to the city. We'll do 950 lights this calendar year, starting at the end of May and finishing up in early June. And then we'll come back next year and also put the other 950 lights in. So we looked at some different locations. The mayor and the police department has approved some locations that we'd like to see the lights put in DeKalb. Some of the more maybe high crime districts, places that need some more light, and these LED lights hopefully will reduce the crime in DeKalb. Okay? And with that, our our original program for being here tonight, Dave Doherty will talk about our smart meter installations and the benefits of those meters, and we'll stick around to answer questions. Okay?
George. Thank you. It's an exciting time for ComEd to be coming to DeKalb with smart meters. This is a program that the Illinois legislature enacted in 2011 as part of the Electric Infrastructure Modernization Act. In 2013, we started installing meters, and we have about 4.2 million meters across northern Illinois to install. In 2018, this is our final year of the program, we've installed 3.9 million and are kind of in that home stretch coming to DeKalb. So very exciting for us. And part of that, George talked about the savings that LED streetlights can bring and modernization that's going on there. The smart meters themselves, it's important to note that for every $1 we put into this program, $2 are returned back to our customers. That we're able to keep our rates low and return that money. So it's over $100 million in savings once we're fully deployed that we're able, through this Modernization Act, to take those savings and keep our bills low. So the smart meter itself is very similar to the meter that you have outside your home now, but it's replacing what was gears and dials with basically a small computer with a radio inside. So I'll pass around the meter.
I have one. Installed one in my apartment not long ago.
So the process, we try to make sure people know we're coming. We start with a bill insert that goes out about 90 days before. There's a direct mailing that will also go out, letting people know that we're coming to exchange the meter, followed then by a letter, letting you know within about 30 days that we're coming out. The meter will be installed by a ComEd employee. That employee will have a photo ID that if you meet with the installer, it's good to ask for that ID. It will say ComEd on there. They will also have a clearly marked vehicle, vehicle. We'll pass this around as well. States clearly that it's a smart meter installer. When our installers come in, they come in kind of like a bit of a herd. So we're going to descend on the city of DeKalb, and we're going to be moving installers out here. DeKalb's a little bit different because of the distance from where the meters come from. We're going to be actually renting out space at the Red Roof Inn and keeping our installers there for a period of about 6 weeks. So right after Memorial Day, you'll see our vehicles, I think, pretty prominently in the city of DeKalb. So we have nearly 19,000 meters to exchange in that 6-week period, and we should be more or less done by early July with probably a few stragglers. So with that, I'll turn it over to questions. I know you got a busy agenda.
We do have a busy agenda, but I'm sure that if we have any questions, we'd like to give those to you. Otherwise, we always know where to reach you and George, Dave.
That's right.
Any other comments? Thank you very much. George, thank you.
Just want to take a moment and thank Ruth Scott for getting us on the agenda and redoing this, the agenda, because I know we were supposed to be here 2 weeks ago. But also NIU, Northern Illinois University, has a program Wednesday at Eduardo's Restaurant at 6 o'clock. It's part of their STEM program, their education. They're going to be talking about the benefits of the smart meter. So if anybody wants to join us there, they're putting the program on, and I'm just attending to listen to see what they have to say.
And George, I commend you. When we first met, we talked about those LED lights. You told me there might be 300 installed.
Yeah.
And I said, what, George? We need more.
We need more.
And I know where we need them. So, you stepped up, and I appreciate that. We really do.
Well,
that was one area of our community where we really need that help, and so I appreciate it.
Well, one of the characteristics of a good mayor is to always ask for more. And I know that for firsthand, because for 8 years I was full-time mayor in Freeport, Illinois, before coming to ComEd. So thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Alderman.
Thank you, Jordan. Moving right along, item B, community coordinated child care, which we know is 4C. The FY 2018 Human Services Funding Annual Report. I'd like to ask its Executive Director, Susan Peterson, to speak to this item. Susan?
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I want to thank you for the meaningful and successful partnership that 4C and the City of DeKalb has had for over 20 years with the Human Services funding. The $18,000 that 4C will receive in 2018 will support the vital services of our nurse, our assistant, and our social worker. I'm going to give you a couple numbers. So right now we are working with 776 children that were screened in child care centers in DeKalb. Out of those 776 children, we found 34 children that are going to be referred for vision, and we have 20 children that are going to be referred for hearing. So when we have a health assistant and a social worker and a nurse go into a child care center, what they're doing is they're going in and they're doing screenings of which they've been trained for. They do state trainings. They have to have their certificates updated every year, and then they also have to have the meters that they work with calibrated. So we know what we're doing is really high tech and also very efficient. When they go in and they work with these children, they are playing with the children, and they're also doing these tests in their native language. So we make sure that children are being tested in the best environment possible. When we talk about the 760 children that were screened, and we talk about the 34 that need vision hearing, we're talking about 34 children from the ages of 2.5 to 5 that are visually challenged. I don't know about you, but I wear contacts, and if I can't see, then sometimes I'm anxious, sometimes I'm scared. If I'm a 3-year-old and I don't understand why I'm not able to see the book, I'm not able to see the computer, I'm not able to interact with my friends, then sometimes I make bad choices. So this screening, this vision and hearing can also help support children when it comes to the social emotional and being ready to be a good citizen in kindergarten. So we're really wanting to make sure that we're preventing children from having learning disabilities, from challenges, and sometimes it is behavior because they're not understanding the world around them. So that's what your money is doing to support us here at 4C. We are estimating that in FY18, 6,776 children will be screened and also worked with our social worker and our nurse and assistant. Out of that, 51% of those children will be DeKalb residents' children. 4,160 children will be screened or will be seen with a social worker and have a face-to-face consultation. 4C will utilize the dollars to partner with families and child care professionals in our community who nurture and challenge young minds to love reading, live with laughter, engage in the sciences, appreciate the arts, make healthy food choices, and be compassionate citizens. We actively advocate for the well-being of all of our children, turning statistics into successes. I want to thank you again for your support financially and also throughout the year for the children in our community and for who is going to be our next leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Any comments from council? Yes, Alderman Orico.
I'm going to embarrass Susan, but I served on the 4C board for about 7 years. And I know firsthand what wonderful work they do and how carefully they steward the funds they get from the city and other sources. I also know firsthand the impact of the screening. Susan's heard me tell this story years ago, more years than I want to remember, probably almost 20 now. My son was one of those children who was identified as having a vision problem. We had no idea. He was about 4, and I'll never forget the day he got his glasses, looking out the window and saying, "Oh, look at the leaves on the tree." He hadn't been able to see them. So I will always be grateful to 4C. And I know there are many other parents out there who feel the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any
Thank
other
you,
questions?
Susan.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. I have no appointments this evening, so moving from item 3 to item 4, public participation. Our first round of speakers have indicated that they'd like to speak to an item not listed on the agenda. I'd like to ask those folks to please come to the podium as we call them up, and I would ask that you try to stay within that 3-minute limit, because we have quite a few speakers. Tonight's first speaker who would like to speak to an item not listed on the agenda is Jim Mason. Jim?
Jerry, what I was gonna talk about was
One.
on the agenda. I could wait.
Okay.
A little out of secret, Jim Mason, mayor, council, staff, and everybody else. I would like to wait until it's my turn on new business, if it's okay.
Okay, the folks who I think would like to speak, and I don't know what it was that you want to speak, Jim. I have an idea what you'd like to take.
Let's get it. Let's do it.
If it's on the city manager request for proposal,
Yes.
I looked at that as a different item than what you wanted to talk about. So that's why
I appreciate that. I
gave
think
you
I
the
should wait.
courtesy to speak to this early on, so you wouldn't have to wait around.
No, I appreciate that, but
Yeah.
I'll wait.
You
Okay?
wait? Okay.
Yeah, I'll wait.
All right, very good. Our next speaker is Dwayne Brown.
Dwayne Brown. What makes a successful businessman? They are disciplined, focused on making their businesses work, and eliminate any distractions to their goals. Confidence. They are confident they will make their businesses succeed. They're open-minded. Ideas are constantly being generated. They're creative. Determination. They look at defeat as an opportunity for success. They have strong people skills. They know how to motivate their employees. Passion. They genuinely love their work. They are willing to put in those extra hours to make their business succeed because there is a joy their businesses give which goes beyond the money. Successful. Entrepreneurs want to see what the view is like at the top of the mountain. Once they see it, they want to go further. They know how to talk to their employees, and their businesses soar as a result. Jim Mason has all these qualities. His experience and willingness to lead this city out of the high taxation and financial quagmire we are in. Reduce crime, promote economic growth, increase education, improve our airport, increase public transportation, create a better relationship with NIU, repair our streets and fleet, and have more transparency between the City of DeKalb and its citizens. I ask the council to accept Jim's offer, make this city vibrant, business-friendly, and its residents proud to live here. We need him. I hope he accepts this. Our last two city managers, we've had no economic growth. We're spiraling in a downward spiral. If we don't get someone who has business skills, which is exactly what the city manager needs, we're going to be just an impoverished city. I hope he accepts the city manager position. I hope the council approves it, and we certainly need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Our next speaker is John Anderson.
Thank you. John Anderson, 4th Ward. Just about the same thing that Dwayne has said here was on my mind. Having a business person here came to mind before Jim announced that he was going to use his services or give you his services to run this office. And I just think it's just great that a businessman with over 50 years experience stepped forward to do this job. And like Dwayne said, this city is going spiraling downhill. The state's going downhill. But you got to do something here, that'll get things going, moving, and we need jobs. We need jobs real bad. The jobs we have in this town right now, if you're not working for the government, you're really scratching the bottom. And we don't have any industry. The factories have all left us. And I think it's a real good move if the council would listen to Jim and take him up on his offer. And I thank you.
Thank you, John. Our next speaker is Mark Charvat. Mark?
I'm just going to run through some bullet points. Like John and Dwayne said, I think it's very reasonable and a very good thing if this council were to consider Jim Mason's offer. It's one of those things where you guys can actually save money, and if he's going to offer his services, I know save money now. We like to spend. We have search firms and all this nonsense we're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for. You got the right guy right here, so at least entertain the possibility. Some of you have had kind of smug faces when the last two speakers spoke, so please actually give it some actual consideration here. I want to focus on a few things here. The consent agenda, I'm glad to see that it does not have any spending measures on it. I've brought this up to you guys on many occasions before, and some of you before you were elected, that I do not like seeing spending items on the consent agenda. The consent, if it's on the consent agenda, it gets buried. It should be an up or down vote. I'm not asking for a debate on these things, but items on the consent agenda that involve taxpayer expenditures need to have a separate up or down vote. Some of you I talked to before you were elected regarding the EPI report, and another citizen brought this to light just a couple weeks ago, that the EPI report still has portions that have not been released to the public. This report is like 4 or 5 years old. Please release the redacted portions of the EPI report. We paid for this report as taxpayers. Release the information. Some of you made campaign promises to do so, and I've seen no progress in this area. At the Committee of the Whole meeting, there was a topic brought up regarding their special ward meeting for 1st and 2nd Ward. None of this information is on social media, either on the police department's Facebook page or the City of DeKalb's Facebook page regarding this ward meeting. If you want people to attend the parking ward meeting for 1st Ward and 2nd Ward, please publish that. You publish everything else on there, so this is an important meeting, so let's get that on there. Mayor, a few weeks ago, you brought up the fact that you're going to be bringing more people to boards and commissions. You're looking for people. Is there any sort of a listing of the positions you're looking for? I have not seen that on social media either regarding the boards and commissions, so we need to get that out there. I would like to also see, and I think Bessie brought this up a few weeks ago, a listing of all the members of all the commissions on the City of DeKalb website, along with their contact information. So if citizens have concerns about everything from Environmental Commission to Planning Commission, we can actually contact those on the boards. There's no way to contact these people. No emails, no nothing. So get that out there. And finally, we need an update from the City Council regarding the Lord Stanley situation, what we've learned over the past couple of weeks. Perhaps we can get another update as far as what's going on with the Lord Stanley situation. That's it.
Thank you, Mark. Less than 3 minutes.
Yep.
Okay, and our final speaker wanting to speak to an item under citizens' comments, not necessarily to an item on the agenda, is Kay Shelton. Okay?
Just a reminder that the documentary All the Queen's Horses is this Thursday. 7 o'clock. It's free at the Egyptian Theater. This is the documentary that went through how Rita Crudwell stole $53 million from the city of Dixon. And it's a very, very good documentary. It's free. I would encourage everybody who's interested in any spending whatsoever, as well as how to organize and how not to organize an organization, and how to close your eyes and miss things. That was a big miss, $53 million. So that's this Thursday. A few weeks ago, I mentioned the $45,000 in Chamber of Commerce budget that's on the annual spending. And I do work for 2 other chambers of commerce, not even close to here, and they don't get any tax dollars. So actually, probably a good fit for Mr. Mason might be for the DeKalb Chamber of Commerce. And that seems like a much better fit. And then maybe you can cut that $45,000 in spending there in a different way. And lastly, I can't stay for the whole thing. G3 is about water tower painting. My father, who hates your restaurant tax, really, really, really loves the paint on the water towers here. In fact, he loves the paint so much, he sent me out with a camera to take pictures of it. It's because the bottom of the water towers has dark paint. So it takes longer for the water towers to look dirty. So he really likes the paint, and he tried to get his hometown city council to paint the bottoms of their water towers with dark paint instead of white paint, because the dirt on his water towers drives him nuts. So hopefully you'll continue to keep the water towers not looking so dirty. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate, for those comments. Moving right along now, there are several other speakers, but they are going to speak to items that are on our agenda as we move through the evening tonight. Item number F, consent agenda. As you recall, this is an item on our agenda which is handled by omnibus vote, one motion and 1 second, and we will vote on those items in a collective manner. Motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Here are the following items on the consent agenda. Approval of City Council minutes. Minutes of the Special Committee of the Whole meeting of March 20, 2018. Minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of March 26, 2018. Minutes of the regular City Council meeting of March 26, 2018. Minutes of Special City Council meeting of March 30th, 2018. Minutes of the Special City Council meeting of April 4, 2018. Number 2, receive and file accounts payable and payroll through April 23, 2018 in the amount of $1,708,609.38. B, investment and bank balance summary through February 2018. C, year-to-date revenues and expenditures for the general fund and water fund through February 2018. And finally, 3, Resolution 2018-051, authorizing the mayor to sign a customer release form for the ComEd LED street lighting program. We do have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion passes. Moving right along, item G, items for separate action. Our first one is number 1, ordinance 2018-017, amending Chapter 52, offenses against public peace, safety, and morals, subsection 52.130, parental responsibility. This is the second reading of this ordinance. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Speaking to this item is our Police Chief, Gene Lowry. Gene?
Thanks again, council, staff, and community. I don't know that we have to go back through any great detail of Compass. It's been presented a couple of times to the council. I guess I would just simply say it's a reflection on the police department proactively engaging multiple community stakeholders to try and get ahead of the game in regard to juvenile offenders and juveniles at risk. The program has the support of the DeKalb County State's Attorney's Office, Youth Service Bureau, a host of others that are involved from the social service community. We believe it's a viable program that would basically get intercepts earlier in the system instead of relying on arrest to solve all our problems. With that, I would just try to respond to any questions you might have.
Are there any further questions on this Compass program? Yes, Alderman Fagan.
Gene, I just want to say this is an excellent program you guys brought out. I was really impressed when the assistant chief brought this. I've also heard through the community, just people talking about it and being very impressed. Proactive. I mean, granted, when you have children, by the grace of God, go live because you don't know what could happen. But with working with the kids, I think this is a great proactive program you've got there.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Alderman Noriko.
And I'd like to echo those comments and also add, as my husband and I were facing some challenges with our teenagers who are hopefully, for the most part, beyond that at this point, you know, just how helpful it would have been, you know, to have resources and also have the ability, you know, to connect with other parents and, you know, support, knowing, you know, to help you get through it and knowing that there is light at the end of the tunnel. So for all of us who have parented teenagers and are still living, thank you.
I appreciate that. You know, I would only say from a common sense perspective, I was a street kid, and I got in trouble with the law very early on. And if it wasn't for the intercept, and I have to be honest with you, it was at the first glimmer of what Youth Service Bureau was about decades ago. Had someone not grabbed me by the back of the neck and said, you know, it's time for an intervention, young man, the outcome might have been a whole lot different.
It's been moved and seconded that we enact this ordinance. This is a second reading. Roll call.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
7 yes.
Gene, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving along, item 2, Resolution 2018-052, authorizing an independent contractor agreement with Myovision Technologies, Inc., for the purchase of traffic counting devices in the amount not to exceed $103,135. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. I'm going to ask our Public Works Director, Tim Holdeman, to speak to this item, please. Tim?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This item is being brought before you tonight, having been passed by the DeKalb Sycamore Area Transportation Study, or DSATS, Policy Committee, and approving the funding thereof. 80% of that funding will come from federal grants and 20% from state grants. City Council now, as the physical agent, must approve the contract. So this item is for the purchase of 5 video traffic counting machines. These devices will be used in lieu of hiring a consultant to do the work on an annual basis. There'll probably be about a 3-year payback period on this. We're paying about $36,000 to $40,000 a year for the traffic studies, DSATS is. And with this expenditure, we'll have flexibility that we don't currently have with the contractor. When we hire a contractor, they do their work in a week or 10 days, and then that's it. With these units in possession of DSATs, we can go out and do the traffic studies whenever we deem necessary. So that's the big advantage, as long as financially the payback period probably 3 years or so. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Noriko.
I do have a question. In for security purposes, what's, to keep someone from coming and taking one of those tripods? Because, I can't see anybody being excited about stealing a traffic counting device, but the tripods seem like they might have some other value. Are they, chain link, whatever?
Yeah. No, they aren't. The tripod would be used as a means of last resort.
Oh, okay.
Typically, the video counters are put on a pole or a stand.
Yeah, I got
and
that.
then padlocked to that,
Yeah.
so it can't be moved. But in some instances where those are not available, we might use a tripod. Obviously, we would try to secure it to the extent possible.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure that it isn't just kind of sitting out there and,
And there's just one tripod in case there's no other means of mounting the video camera.
Okay.
Alderman Fanouken.
Tim, if I understand it correctly, too, that the devices will also be able to be used by the component communities. In other words, DeKalb could use it for a special event or whatever, Sycamore could use it, Cortland, the county, all the different participating partners of the DSATs.
That's correct.
So we get just more than just for DSATs out of it.
Correct.
Any other comments? Roll call.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion passes. Thank you, Tim. Number 3, Resolution 2018-053, authorizing an engineering services agreement with Dixon Engineering Incorporated for coding, inspection, and construction engineering of the North Water Tower painting and repair in an amount not to exceed $41,492. Our Assistant Public Works Director, Brian Favor, will address this item. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. At the last council meeting held on April 9th, council awarded a bid to L&T Painting for the painting of the North Water Tower. Staff is requesting approval of an engineering services agreement with Dixon Engineering for the coating, inspection, and construction engineering for painting and repair to the city's North Water Tower. The services will include critical phase inspections of the repair work of the tower. In addition, Dixon will monitor surface preparation and coating application related to the repainting of the tower to ensure proper thickness, coverage, and uniformity. As previously mentioned, the work is expected to begin in June with completion by the end of September. The bottom of the tower will be painted black. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding this.
We need a motion.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded now. Any further comment or questions of Brian? Roll call.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion
Thank you,
passes.
Mayor.
Thank you, Brian. Number 4, Resolution 2018-054, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Illinois Department of Transportation, the DeKalb Sycamore Area Transportation Study Metropolitan Planning Organization, and the City of DeKalb Transit Provider for the cooperative development of a transportation performance management system. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Our transportation, and our Public Works Director again, Tim Haldeman, will address this item. Tim?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an intergovernmental agreement between IDOT, the DSATs, who's our Metropolitan Planning Organization, and the city. And it's an agreement between these 3 agencies to cooperatively develop a transportation performance measurement system or performance management system. So the federal government passed regulations attempting to be able to quantify improvements in our transportation system as a result of their grants. So they have passed that down to the state, and now the state is going to the MPOs asking for cooperation in developing these performance management systems. The idea is to establish where the money is going and the effectiveness of that money in improving safety, the infrastructure, looking at system reliability, and several other criteria. The city gets involved here because we are the transit provider. And so as the transit provider, this agreement requires us to share information about the transit system with the MPO. And obviously, we do that on a regular basis. And so we would recommend that City Council approve this intergovernmental agreement to share information with the MPO.
Thank you. Prior to discussion or questions from the City Council, I'll ask a member of the audience, our former Mayor Bessie Chronopoulos, who'd like to speak to this item. Bessie?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Holdeman did a remarkable job, I think, of explaining this a few weeks ago. I think last month, wasn't it, that there was a presentation? And it's very intriguing to see, and I think a very positive, conceptually, to look at all the different components of public transportation and see how they can be utilized. I think that's almost a no-brainer. It's a positive concept. But I do have some questions, and maybe these questions, a little bit of it was just answered today when Tim made some comments. But I'm looking at the overall financial picture in the future as far as grants. How long are grants going to be available? We've all seen grants come and go, and sometimes, you know, we get into something, but maybe we don't look 5, 10 years out to, you know, is the grant still going to be there? The roads, the impact on the roads. Now, Tim, somebody's going to have to help me from Public Works, but if I recall correctly, one bus is equivalent to like 5,000, you know, 5,000, you told me 50, but it wasn't, 5,000 cars. I remember that because that was just, I thought, 5,000 cars. So obviously, roads are impacted, and that's a cost. Ridership, you know, especially with NIU, and here, where is the ridership? And, you know, the financial things. So I guess if I was to put all of these questions under one umbrella, it would be the sustainability factor. Now, ideas are really good and they make sense, but what is the sustainability factor? And I don't know enough about each and every one of these. It would take me days to go through each, you know, everything that has been pulled together so far. And even then, I'd only be scratching the surface. But the sustainability, I think, is a question that council needs to keep in the back of their minds as they progress. So that's all I have to say. You got to do the thinking and the heavy lifting on this one.
Thank you, Bessie.
You bet.
Any further comments or questions of that? I will just indicate that we need to take action on this no later than the 27th of May, or we really are jeopardizing the risk of losing federal transportation funds on this item. Alderman Verbeek.
Bessie certainly makes a good point, though.
Right.
I think that long-term, we have to determine, is our transportation system sustainable? What portion of that is coming from the City of DeKalb? And I think over time, we'll determine what that commitment will be. Certainly, transportation is critical for us in the city. Not all of us can rely upon a car to get to here and there. So this is very critical to the city, but yet I think we need to know along the way, what does this look like it will cost us in the long run?
Absolutely. Any further comments? Roll call. Oh, excuse me.
I had a
Alderman
question,
Marquardt.
just a clarification for Tim. Is this just a measuring tool of the program that we already have in place?
No, it is a new program, and the MPO, like DSATs, has the option of developing their own performance measurements or adopting the state's. And because it is relatively new, and we don't have a lot of time, we're going to opt to adopt the state's, at least in this first year. As the program gets going, we may want to tweak that a little bit with our own performance measures, but we think that it's a good first start to go along with the state. The state is going around different communities in different areas, getting input. They've been doing a lot of work on with transportation experts on establishing their performance measures. So we think it's a good place to start.
So it's additional money in grants?
No.
So
It is, yeah, it's really using existing data, but putting that in a format that will be able to demonstrate improvements or declines in performance. So it's really just using the existing data in a different way to be more clear in terms of the effectiveness of the grants that the federal government's giving.
of what we're already doing?
Yeah.
That answer your question, Mike?
Yeah, I took it that this was a different way of measuring what we were already doing that was being mandated. How we were already using existing money that was coming into DSATs and the MPO, not that it was a new application for grant funding or anything that was being done. It was just another requirement of actually receiving what we're already receiving.
That's correct.
Got it.
Now, roll call.
Verbic,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
7 yes.
Thank you. Item number 5, Resolution 2018-055, approving the Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan, 1-year use of funds for program year 25, April 1, 2018 through March 31, 2019. If you recall, not too long ago, we did have a public hearing on this item. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Joanne Rouse, once again, our Community Services Assistant, and the person in charge of the Community Development Block Grant Plan will address this item. Joanne?
Mayor and members of council, the resolution that is being presented for your consideration is approval of the draft that was presented this evening and described in the public hearing and also included in your packet materials in greater detail. The draft plan, as I mentioned, is an estimate of what we believe we will get from HUD and how we would allocate those funds based on that estimate. Approval of this resolution includes the understanding that numbers will be adjusted accordingly based on the actual allocation when HUD issues it and will be adjusted proportionately either up or down as required. If there were any drastic changes in the overall funding level from HUD, council would be advised. The other option, other than approving the resolution as it stands tonight, would be the issuance of any recommendations or suggestions that you have as how you would like to see it handled.
Any questions of Joanne? Alderman Fanouken?
Joanne, if there was a significant reduction in funding, how would the holdover funds be affected? You know, you talked earlier about the numbers staying the same percentage-wise, but like we have those holdover funds, would those still go to those specific line items?
The holdover funds would still be allocated to the City of DeKalb. I think that in the event of a drastic funding reduction, one of the options that HUD allows you is to go back and revise your 5-year consolidated plan if you needed to make any major reallocations of monies that you had. So it would be an option to negotiate with HUD for some changes in our plan, and then revise the action plan to move some of those monies if that were necessary.
All right, thank you.
Any other further comments? Roll call.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
7 yes.
Okay, we move right along to item H. Thank you, Joanne. H, new and unfinished business. Item number 1, review of the request for proposals for city manager recruitment and selection services. And I take it this is simply an informational item at this point. Is that correct?
Correct.
I'd like to ask our Human Resources Director, Chris Randall, to speak to this item, please.
Thank you, Mayor. As the council may recall, the council was presented with considerations regarding the city manager recruitment process on the April 9th Committee of the Whole meeting, and the council directed staff to initiate the process of seeking proposals from qualified recruitment firms. So in your packet, you will see the request for proposal, and we're looking for consensus of the council to release it. The request for proposal outlines mainly the scope of work that the city will be looking for, and some of the bullet points will be to provide access to qualified candidates that may not be actively looking on the job market, to create a professional profile of the position with community input and input for council, provide council with recommended compensation package, effective advertising and marketing of the opportunity on a regional and national scope, direct timely contact with candidates, pre-screen candidates, coordinate the interview process, interview structure, rating criteria and scheduling, and conduct reference checks, backgrounds, and provide the council with best practice and industry standards in compensation in terms and conditions of employment. So we intend to release the request for proposal tomorrow. It's going to be available on our website. We also have a list of search firms that have inquired for service opportunities with the city in prior years, so we always keep a database of future opportunities. Those folks will also receive the information. The proposals, if released tomorrow, will be due on May 14th.
Since we didn't have a motion and a second on this, you're not asking for approval other than a consensus that what this council discussed during our meeting 2 weeks ago is there so that you can move forward on this request for proposal.
That's correct.
We're spending no money. We're simply asking proposals for a search for the city manager. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, Alderman Verbeek.
Will these firms, will it matter to these firms if we anticipate changing code with regard to the city manager? In other words, what we could consider are those expectations from that position, and also contractual type language that we've used in the past perhaps needs to be improved upon. So does any of that need to be discussed before we go out to RFP?
Not at this time. No, that will really matter once the council will meet with whoever company the council decide to work with to work on the position profile. That will be extremely important because the position profile will provide the expectations not only for the council, but the candidate will also evaluate if that will be a good position for them. So at that point, we should have a very good framework of what the expectations are going to be.
Thank you.
This process is extremely critical to this community. And again, for those who want a little bit further education, there's a tremendous amount of paperwork in the form of a PDF that's, again, accessible off of our website on the background information, including the actual request for proposal that your staff put together. So I appreciate that. Alderman Fagan.
I've got a question regarding doing this in-house or going out for outside sources on this. The last two city managers that we've had, how was the recruitment done? Was it done in-house or was it done by a third party?
The last one I know it was done by an external firm. The one before that, it was before my time, and I do not know the answer.
Does anybody know about Bernanke?
It was an
internal?
No, an internal hire.
Oh, internal
He was
hire.
already working here.
It was an internal.
Gotcha. So we didn't have to go out. Okay. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, about putting all the other hires on the back burner that we talked about before. I still don't get that at all.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't get it. I mean, it's that I just don't get it. That's it.
And one of the things we have to decide, we have to let the public know too, and I think we've tried to do this through comments to the media, through the stories that have been in the media, is that while we are requesting the proposals, this does not in any way, shape, or form negate the possibility of promoting from within, finding somebody locally. We would hope that anybody locally who is interested in this position will in fact look at the proposal and feel free to do this. So this is just really one of the first steps. And I know before I asked for consensus from the city council on basically what we had pretty much decided a couple of weeks ago, we have a couple of folks who would like to speak to this, so I thought it might be appropriate, Chris, please stick around to hear their comments. And the first one is Jim Mason. Jim, you waited around this long, and this is the place on the agenda I think you wanted to speak to.
Educational process for all of us. I'll start again. Jim Mason and Mayor, Council, everybody here. It's so neat to see democracy in action. How's the audio? Is it okay?
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council staff. I will be short this evening, believe it or not. As most of you know, I'm volunteering my services as city manager for the DeKalb, Illinois. I'm doing so because I am afraid we might miss a chance to turn the corner to a brighter and more solvent future. I presently operate in 4 cities: Fort Lauderdale, Florida; Sycamore, Illinois; Rockford, Illinois; DeKalb, Illinois; West Chicago, with different kinds of businesses. I've been in business since February of 1967, and I came in this room when they built it, and it hasn't changed too much. Council has a certain protocols to find new city manager. I will follow and be part of that protocol, whatever you feel is necessary. I have plenty of time. The mayor has given me permission for due diligence for both finance with the city and city attorney and legal review. The reason for that is I want to know what's going on if in fact you ask me to help you out. I do due diligence on everything I do, and I know if I'm going to be successful or I won't do it. Lastly, if I am chosen, I will carry out my duties as city manager as if it was my own portfolio. Most people know I'm an efficiency devotee. If people wish to speak to this, and now I'm later because I thought I was going to talk earlier, Jerry, feel free to talk about this. I'm an open book, and I invite anybody in the city of DeKalb to call my radio show on Thursdays, and I will talk about issues pertaining to this on my radio show. I do broadcast on the World Net, and so people know about DeKalb because of my show. I want to thank you, and I yield.
Thank you, Jim. We have one other person who would like to speak to this item, and that is William Heinisch. Will.
Will Heinisch, local businessman, local property owner and farmer. Good evening, council.
Good evening.
I plan on going to see all the Queen's horses at the Egyptian Theater. We have a movie in the process making here at the City of DeKalb. It's all the city managers' consultants. And if you think about it, where's all the money gone? Why are we in the problems that we've had? I've harped on for 4 or 5 years about organic growth and have thrown out suggestions of what we need to get organic growth to get us back on track. Yet the only organic growth that we have found is in a building in downtown DeKalb, as it's been reported. This city has hit a glass ceiling. We're going virtually nowhere. The past 2 city managers have failed. We've had past weak councils unable to fire people that need to be fired. And I'm wondering if the city manager form of government is the right option. Or is it getting the right city manager? The right city manager needs to understand the right forms of organic growth and be a business entrepreneur. Please consider those items in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Do we have consensus that we want to move forward with releasing the request for proposal tomorrow? And follow the process that was outlined in the request for proposal document? Okay, thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Item number 2 under new and unfinished business, review of the request for proposals for city engineering services. Again, an informational item. We're not being asked to give any kind of approval on this, but we'd like to hear what our Public Works Director, Tim Holderman, has to say on this.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. You'll recall that in late December of 2016, we had staff reductions in the engineering division of the Public Works Department. Subsequent to that, about a couple months after that, our city engineer resigned. And at that time, I went out and interviewed 5 different firms for qualifications to provide city engineering services. And I came back to City Council and made a recommendation to hire WBK Engineering. And that was approved, and we hired them from February to the end of June 2017. We spent that 4 months really defining what the city engineer position needed to be, trimming it down to the bare essentials. At that point, we weren't quite ready to develop the job description, and so we asked for another 6 months, and City Council gave us that. We posted the city engineer position in November, and in December, we interviewed we had acquired 7 applications for the position, and we interviewed 4 of those candidates. None of those candidates had the qualifications and experience that we need, primarily the breadth of experience to really be a city engineer. Each one of them were proficient in their own areas, but really lacked the breadth of experience and knowledge. WBK has done an excellent job, but we lack continuity. We lack the ability to count on the engineer being here in the long term. We continued in January and February of this year. We actually reposted the position. We got 2 new applicants, and we interviewed one of them, and they were not able to meet the requirements as well. So at this point, although we would love to have an in-house city engineer, I think it's necessary for us to make the jump to go for a request for proposal to engineering firms for providing those services. And again, I say we lack continuity, so all of our departments and that depend on engineering, primarily public works, just don't have any continuity. We don't have confidence that the engineer we're working with today is going to be here in a month from now. And that's a problem. We would like to have a longer term agreement. That also, as I have talked to these engineering firms, will afford us a better fee, a more reasonable fee. And what we're hoping that we can get is consulting services on a 40-hour per week basis for approximately the same salary plus benefits that we were paying before. And that's right around $140,000 to $150,000 a year. And we believe that in that $12,000 to $13,000 a month range, we can hire a consulting firm that will provide us the 40 hours a week of engineering services, and they will be spend a lot of time here. They will have an office here, and hopefully 40 hours here. But we're not tied to that. We want to send this request for proposal out to get proposals from firms so that we can begin to negotiate on the most qualified firm a price and terms for providing the city engineering services. If we don't find the right firm, if we can't negotiate the right price, then we would come back, sign WBK up for another 6 months, and come back and try again on the city engineer position. But right now, the city of DeKalb is in the same boat as a lot of communities, where we're just not able to find that qualified and experienced city engineer.
From my vantage point, and I've been here now as the mayor for a year, having an engineer is extremely important in that whole engineering services gamut. Let me ask the question, will we continue to advertise for the permanent engineer as we make this request for proposals from firms?
Mayor, I would not. I would take it down.
You would what?
I would take down the job posting.
Okay.
To signify to the engineering firms that we're serious, that we want their lowest and best offer, and that's the direction that we're moving.
Do we have the, in the request for proposal, do we, and I had, again, I looked at this a little bit, do we have the authority or the luxury of asking that one person be assigned to us? And we've been fortunate here in that Greg Chisamark has been very, very involved here, and he's been sort of our city engineer, and I think that's a good situation. But I'd hate to see us get into a scenario where we have a firm that we have one engineer 1 month and another engineer another month.
A couple things. We would expect to interview not the firm, but the firm as well as the individual that
Okay.
would be assigned to the city of DeKalb. We would expect that, and we would require that as part of the contract.
Good. Alderman Jacobson.
Yeah.
Typically, if this was an in-house staff position, it would be an overtime exempt position, correct?
Yes.
Again, understanding that and understanding the flex time of a former city engineer and the amount of hours they were having effectively to put in that was well over 40, again, to get what we'd pay salary and benefits for a 40-hour-a-week position isn't a value to us. I think it's a mistake to go out there and tell firms that we are offering this amount? Why would they ever put anything less on the table if we're showing our cards? And again, if we were to pay that amount of salary to an in-house individual, we'd expect them generally to be working 15 or 20 more hours above that 40 every week. So unless they're willing to provide that, and I don't understand how a contractor could, I mean, I'm sure it could be worded in a way that they could, I'm not willing to provide them what we'd pay an in-house person when they're not putting in the same hours of work as an in-house person is. This idea of outsourcing, and we were told by the former city manager that outsourcing was going to be a huge cost savings for us over what the salary and benefits of the last person was. So I want to see that savings plus the savings of effectively getting 30% less work time than an in-house person would be. I mean, so I'd like to see it in the $8,000 or $9,000 a month range for that 40-hour-a-week position, and no more than that.
Yeah, Alderman Fagan?
Why don't we just omit it, the entire wording on what we're expecting to pay?
Well, I think it's reasonable to let the engineering firms know what our expectations are.
You?
Yes. I mean,
I'm not that familiar. I mean,
Yeah.
I go for bid business, and they don't tell us what's expected, and whatever, but.
no, these are within the parameters. But certainly, the firms who are most interested and most committed to City of DeKalb will in fact hear this discussion and will in fact sharpen their pencil and address those issues, and we can make it known what City Council's desires are. And when we negotiate those contracts, we can accommodate this request. And if we don't get what we're asking for, then we'll come back and say, you know, this is the best we could do. But we intend to identify those that are qualified, select the one, and then negotiate. If we can't negotiate a reasonable terms, we'll go to the next qualified if that firm was qualified, and so on, and until we run out. And if we run out, we'll come back and tell you that we couldn't meet the specific criteria established by City Council, if that's our directive.
And on any outsourcing situation like this, it comes down to City Council approval ultimately on approving that. Alderman Noriko.
Thanks, Tim. WBK, would they be a candidate for presenting a proposal?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then this 40 hours per week, is that something 40 or 40 plus, as Alderman Jacobson alluded to, is that something that's pretty standard throughout the whole year?
Yes. No, as it goes, you know, the work could require more for a certain week. If there's a deadline, obviously there would be more work need to be done. A 10-hour day for a couple of days. A long night at City Council is not, or other public meetings is not unusual for this situation. Certainly, we'll ask, we'll make City Council's desires known to these firms as they develop their proposals.
I guess what I was wondering, and I don't even know if it's realistic, are there periods of time where there may not be 40 hours of work in a given week? Or is that so rare that?
I'm sorry, Kate, I didn't hear the
I
first
said,
part.
would there be weeks that there wouldn't be those, 40 hours, or that isn't okay?
40 hours would be a bottom.
The bare,
Yeah.
okay.
So,
okay.
Typically what I'm used to is a time and materials contract. Now, there may be engineering firms out there that will do it based on a retainer and provide, I mean, there has to be a cap on the number of hours, some cap, but it could certainly be above the 40. And, if an engineering firm had an individual that could provide that service and the fee was acceptable, we would definitely look at that.
Alderman Fanouken.
Tim, maybe I missed it, but I don't see a proposed length of contract in here. Are we looking at 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? What are we looking at? And I guess I didn't see that in here.
Yeah. The term of the contract is undesignated. It's basically as long as the two parties are in agreement, and it gives us the right for 30-day notice for termination. So that contract could be extended until such time as we no longer wanted to have the firm engaged.
Okay, and then I did see that they have to give 120 days notice, I think, if they
Was
decide.
it, I'm sorry, yeah, it was longer.
Okay, but for them to withdraw, it's 120.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
David.
When you were responding to my last set of questions,
Sure.
you made the comment that we are going to go out and effectively find the one that's the most qualified and then negotiate with them. And then an RFQ and RFP, we would ask and expect we would pick by price. So is this going out as an RFP or an RFQ?
No, this is, we've already done the qualifications of the firms, and so we have those firms identified. We're requesting their proposal to provide these services, a non-monetary proposal. So we're not asking for a cost. This is not a cost proposal. So we will select the firm that's most qualified and then negotiate the price. So the proposal does not include the price, but we give them what our expected budget is and allow them to then be creative in here's how we can meet your expected budget. But it's a
Without
non-price proposal.
understanding competing proposals, how do we expect anyone to sharpen their pencils? I mean, they're effectively, that kind of defeats the process of competitive bidding, doesn't it?
Well, not in professional services, because we know what we want. We know what our budget is. We know we want 40+ hours, the hours that are necessary. So we'll look at the firms without looking at price, the most qualified, select them, and then sit down with them. And if they can meet that criteria, if they can provide us that highly qualified person within the parameters, the budget parameters that we have, and for the number of hours that we will be required, that we will require of them, then we will come back to City Council and say, we've got this contract that meets all the criteria, and recommend to enter into the contract.
Again, if that's the case, then I don't think we should set the expectation that we're willing to pay $12,000 or $14,000 a month. I think that's a unfair indicator if we get a contract brought back to us and the council then decides we're only willing to spend $8,000 or $9,000 a month. If I were the bidder that entered into that and went through all that due diligence and paperwork and process, I would be pretty aggravated. I would say, you offered me 14 and now you're offering me 9. I don't think it's appropriate for us to offer any amount at this point until they're willing to come back and tell us what it's going to cost. I'd like to see their best offer, to see, again, their competitive attributes without seeing our cards first.
So, and I understand where you're coming from. Having been a consultant and understanding the business, there's a certain formula, there's a certain amount of overhead that has to be covered, and there's a certain pay rate that you pay for qualified engineers. And the numbers for a qualified engineer that's going to get $80,000 at least from a private firm, and you divide that, that's $40 an hour. And you put that times 40, that's $16,000. So there's got to be something that gives there. And that's what we're saying, that longevity in the contract will help them sharpen their pencil. But we don't, I mean, this number of 12 to 14 If we could get that and get somebody with a highly qualified engineer for 40-plus hours a week, we would take that and run, because that will be a bargain.
All right.
Any other comments? Is there consensus then that we should allow Mr. Holdeman and our Human Resources Department to follow the process of getting the request for proposal? Alderman Verbeek.
Alderman Jacobson, would you be more comfortable just simply receiving an hourly rate quote?
Again, a year ago, that's what we're in now effectively, is a time and materials contract. And we were told, and we budgeted for much less than I think we're spending this year, that it would be a big cost savings. And now we're finding out that not only is it not a cost savings, we're going to get less hours for more money effectively. So again, I've seen those contracts where we originally contract with a firm and we have an understanding of how many hours it's going to take and budget out that number, and we find out a year later after the audit's in, oh wait, sorry, we spent double or almost triple that amount because the hours were much more than we expected. So again, I don't know how to fix that situation, I guess.
Well, you'll maybe just answer my question, Dave. If you were in Tim's position, what would you like to do? What should we do? What should we as a city council consider going forward?
I don't know. I don't know if I have that answer, to tell you the truth.
Okay. I didn't necessarily expect an answer, but I think it's a fair question.
Again, I'd like to see the firms bid against each other, whether it's hourly or otherwise. And again, if I'm bidding a project as a private contractor, I go out there and say, what are you going to give me and for how much? And have to compare the different offers and the different prices and have the understanding that there's other people bidding against you. And if you don't come in at your lowest number, I may disqualify you from that conversation.
But, Mayor, if I could,
Yeah.
and that's typical for a contractor services for a commodity type service. But in professional services, we typically identify the firm, the person in this case, that is qualified, and then negotiate with them, given what we know we want. And I know that now. And it's proper to give them the general guideline of what you're going to expect before they go through the process of putting their guy out there. And so they know about what it's going to be. Now, we'll try to get the very best, but in the long run, we're looking for that qualified firm and person to be able to provide those services, and then negotiating that price. It's not really a price and then we'll get what we get, because it's really that person that we're looking for. And once we identify that person, then we'll negotiate within the parameters that we've been given, and that is, and what my parameters were that an in-house city engineer, we would not pay more for the consultant than we would for the in-house city engineer. So I'm looking for it to be financially a wash, knowing that we would pay $100,000 plus for a city engineer if they were coming in-house, plus benefits, probably in that 140, 150 range.
Well, I'd like to suggest here that we move forward with that request for a proposal, but that we really, really dig into the numbers. And if we can get somewhere between where you as a professional feel we need to be and where a few of the questions that Alderman Jacobson has brought out, because gosh, we need an engineer, we need engineering services. Is there consensus that then we can move forward on the request for a proposal? Okay, thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. Okay, item number 3, review of the request for proposals for refuse, recyclables, and yard waste. Our management analyst, Pat Didiana, will address this item. And again, this is not an action item per se, but a review of our request for proposals, which we have in the past talked about and endorsed the fact that we wanted to go out for proposals. Pat?
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor. Tonight I'm here to facilitate a final discussion on the RFP for refuse, recyclables, and yard waste that was presented in your agenda packet. This RFP is a culmination of our survey, our discussions, and the RFP offers vendors 3 options based on that information. 2 of them are very similar to the services we have now, with several exceptions. We try is in regards to the community land waste. We're trying to zero in on the actual cost of having 1 to 2. Then we're also going to address e-waste and hazardous household waste items by asking for pricing on a at-your-door service for either a service that's for everyone or something that our residents can opt in as. Our goal is to release the RFP, if all goes well, on the 26th. The 17th, we would close, we would publicly open it, and we would come back with a recommendation on the 11th. Based on that, I know if we have about 3 vendors that are interested, and with that being said, I can answer any questions you guys have.
Okay, well, I understand there are other 3 firms. We have about 3 months, 2 or 3 months to make that decision, because our current contract with Waste Management expires, what, August 31st?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We would close it up, we would have an evaluation, and then we'd
Right.
come
Sure,
back,
sure.
and then we'd
I
have
understand.
about 7 weeks to implement, or if we wouldn't approve, we could, change plans there. And
All I can say is I'm glad we're doing this now as opposed to waiting until July or,
Yeah,
the first part of
absolutely.
August. Okay, any comments on this procedure to address and to proceed with the request for proposals? Okay.
All right, thank you.
There is consensus that we do that. Go ahead and do that.
All right,
Okay?
thank you.
Is there a Terry Faulkner in the, Terry, I have a request form that you wanted to speak to Safe Streets. Were you here for the Committee of the Whole meeting when we discussed this? No. Do you have a comment that you'd like to make? Please. I thought that I had screwed up and put this in the wrong stack, but yeah, we talked about that Committee of the Whole, but we'll let you speak there.
Yes, I apologize for that. I didn't know how the meetings worked or anything, but I wanted to speak on the Safe Street Initiative. When I became aware of this initiative, I think it needs to be rethought, specifically Phase 3, which I know was talked about today. I know that it really affects college students, which primarily live in that area. So I would like to rethink that, mostly because of the financial situations. Like I said, it's predominantly college students right there, and $25 for a parking pass, that's going to really hit our pockets and not only really affect our living habits, because if we invite our parents to come down and spend the weekend with us, they can no longer park on those streets if they want to spend a night with us, or if we want to go down the street and spend a night at our friend's house, we can no longer do that. And finding parking in those areas is already a pain already, and to limit that parking at night is going to really cause even more problems, and I want to bring that up.
Okay, thank you. I would encourage you to speak to Chief Lowry too after the meeting if you would, okay?
Mhm.
Thanks, Terry.
Or their meeting.
I beg your pardon?
Or their meeting that they're gonna hold.
Or their meeting, right. Are you aware of the meeting that's being held this Thursday? No. Okay. Bill, would you give Terry that information?
Sure, it's at 7 p.m. Thursday night at the police station. We'll be discussing the Safe Streets Initiative that evening.
Okay, we move along to the final item on our agenda tonight, and that is our reports. Communications, where we ask our council members if they have anything to report, and we'd start with our first ward Alderman, David Jacobson.
Way back when, 2 hours ago, we were fortunate enough to give Kate Cardella a condemnation.
You haven't got condemnation on the
I
tongue.
got it on my mind, clearly. A
Well, he cuts you
commendation.
off.
I saw how that whole thing kind of rolled out, and it came from, again, one of these insightful, positive communities on one of the blogging groups that someone started the conversation very negative. Downtown is a dump. And Kate was one of the several that responded, what would you do to change it? In terms of a visioning process, in terms of it's easy to point a finger process, but how do we make a difference if we assume one case over another? And from that discussion, very quickly, again, in the process of 10 or 12 days, 80 plus volunteers were organized, multiple community groups, multiple different constituencies, families, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, fraternity members, local businesses, local shops downtown. I mean, to see how many people got involved, it was amazing. And I know Kate mentioned that in some of the blogging that, I mean, she welled up with tears when she was opening the event because it was that insightful to her and that positive to her. Obviously, I was there, Alderman Noriko was there, but we did also have two city employees, Joe Allen and Andy, that weren't standing there pointing fingers. They weren't standing there directing. They were there holding rakes and doing work for us on behalf of the community, on their own time, of course, being that they're overtime exempt employees. And again, to see all those constituencies coming together for the common good, it was impactful. And it was pretty awesome what we were able to do in a very short amount of time. Coming out of that, I think it's important to remember that there are things the city still needs to do. And Joellen and I have been working on a lot of those initiatives that also came out of these discussions. How we can do a better job at maintaining some of our improvements down there. How we can more actively contribute, not necessarily in terms of dollars that are tight, but in terms of force multiplier efforts and things the city can do to help assist some of these resident and grassroots specific things that are going on, whether it's downtown or anywhere in our community. If you have an idea, if you want to get involved, we have lots of opportunity for that here. And the city's willing to help, we're willing to support, we're willing to try to give our services to make sure those events are successes. So I think it's important to go out there and say, rather than always pointing a finger, and I fall into that category very often, get up and do something. If you see some litter, pick it up. If you see something you can do that you have the ability and time to do it. We all benefit from it.
If I may take a little executive privilege here, and I just want to tag on what Dave said. And I want to commend this city council, not so much as a collective group trying to do what is right for the city of DeKalb, but for individually. I can look around and I know the work that each and every one of these ladies and gentlemen do in their own wards and in other areas. And so Dave, I commend you for more or less being one of the catalysts for making this happen. You know, I think we should all be proud of what happened starting at the Egyptian Theater at noon on Sunday. So I thank you. Alderman Fanouken?
Well, Dave just used the phrase, make a difference. And of course, this past Saturday was NIU Cares Day, and they had a large number of volunteers who went spread throughout the city and the community to do a lot of different things, from shoveling mulch to picking up litter to painting house to washing cars out at Oakcrest. So just some of those things, you know, it should be a regular ongoing event where people do volunteerism. And then again, I'd just like to remind everybody that the next meeting of the Glidden North Task Force will be May 7th at 6 p.m. at the County Community Outreach Building. And then also our largest institution in town, the university, is approaching finals week, and just want to wish the students well.
Thank you, Bill. Alderman Marquardt?
No report.
Alderman Fagan?
No report.
Alderman Noriko?
I too want to give a shout out to Kate and for organizing the Sunday Cleanup Day, and also to Joellen. She wields a mean rake. Do not get in that lady's way when she decides to rake out an area. She was amazing. And I was proud. I had my family out there, my daughter and son-in-law and 7-year-old grandson. You know, he and his buddy wielding those long pickup things. Fortunately, I did notice that later on they were a little more efficient in picking up things, but yeah, it was a great day.
Alderman Verbeek?
The Sixth Ward welcomes the Husky Bull and Block Party this Saturday from 12 to 2, and then get your first glimpse, official glimpse of the 2018 Husky football program immediately following.
The DeKalb Police Department family has a brother in need. Police Commander Craig Woodruff, known as Woody. He's battling stage 4 colon cancer. He's well known to us and to others. He was here earlier this evening. He's an excellent police officer, an excellent leader. He's also a great son, husband, and father. He's very proactive in trying to win this battle with cancer. There is a group known as backupHasArrived.com. That's a website that was put together locally here and is to support Woody as a benefit concert featuring a band by the name of Luxury Pork, which features as its soloist Ruth Scott, executive assistant, and that benefit concert is on the 23rd of June. So as we get closer to the date, you'll be hearing more about that Support Woody benefit concert. And we commend those within the city who have put together their efforts to assist Commander Woodruff and to support he and his family in that effort. Plus, it will be one fine concert, I'm sure. I saw the Luxury Pork at the Kiwanis Talent Show a couple of weeks ago, and they really blew the ceiling off of the Egyptian theater, so it was very good. That's my report. I'm going
Jerry?
to ask Ruth Scott if she has any, excuse me.
Jerry.
I'm sorry.
One thing I forgot to mention, next week also is Local DeKalb County Day, May 3rd, with 24
Right.
hours of giving. And I
Right.
didn't want that to slip by without it being mentioned.
Right, yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Ruth, any report?
No, sir, thank you.
Dean Frieders, our city attorney.
No report, Mayor.
Patty Hoppenstedt, our interim city manager.
No report, thank you.
Gene Lowry, our police chief.
Briefly, first, thanks, Mayor, for what you said in regard to Woody. It's appreciated. I strongly encourage everyone who has heard your words to go to backuphasarrived.com. I'd also like to thank many people, but I'll give special thanks to Dean Frieders, our city attorney, Aaron Stevens, and a host of others that I feel bad about not naming, but who came up and put it together. A local web designer donated the work, and if you look at the web design, it's extremely well done.
Really good.
Extremely well done, so thank you for that. There was also a comment earlier about information not being posted on the website concerning the Safe Streets Initiative. On April 13th, the information in regard to the meeting, although it was not classified as a meeting for the ward, it was classified as a informational feedback on the Safe Streets Initiative for Phase 3 and 4 was posted. We also handed out leaflets during our neighborhood canvas for that meeting as part of the promotion for it, which will continue. The citizen was correct. It was not on the police department Facebook, but during the course of the meeting, I've directed them to course correct on that. And I believe Ray Munch of the city, also one of our management analysts, also put out a press release. Thank you.
Thank you. Our finance director, Molly Talkington.
I just wanted to update council on the budget basics video. It was during the meeting having some sound quality as you watch it on YouTube if you go to the meeting view of the video, but we have posted it as a standalone on YouTube and Facebook. You're more than welcome to share and help, spread the news about the city services and the budget we have. Thank you.
Molly, could I ask a question of you? We are in the process, I know you're gonna make a report on the library rebate issue, right? You expect to make a report, or could you make a report over the next couple of meetings?
Sure, I can update where we're at right now,
Okay.
if you'd like. So I've met with the library director, Emily Faulkner, and we have a list of the county taxpayers from the 2016 list that I've taken and calculated what the rebate would be per parcel based on the amount the library settled on, which was just under $1 million in total for the rebate. Currently, the library is working on how to distribute that funding. So they're looking at if they're going to use an external party to essentially print all the checks and do all the mailing for them, or if they're going to do it in-house. Once they determine that, I think that will really kick off the timeline on when it'll be released and when the checks will go out to the citizens.
Good.
So,
I appreciate that report. Do not be shy to continue updating us and updating the public on that. Thank you. Eric Hicks, our fire chief.
Yes, Mayor. I want to update you on an event that's going to happen this weekend, Saturday, April 28th, starting at 9 a.m. We'll be doing one of our annual smoke detector drives, and we're going to be concentrating this year on the Dodge Edition. So we're going to, along with the Red Cross and DeKalb firefighters, we have basically an unlimited supply of detectors, and we're planning on hitting every one of these houses. So we're going to do the entire Dodge Edition, and then we'll be doing 10th Street east to Maplewood, and then south to Taylor Street from Lincoln Highway. So the goal Saturday will be to hit every one of these houses and make sure they have a working smoke detector. They will be provided for free. If they do not, we'll give them one or two. They are detectors with a 10-year lifespan. And for those not in that area, we do have plenty of detectors available, and we'll be happy to get you one if you're not in that canvas area.
Thank you. Joellen Charlton, our Community Development Director.
Thank you. Just one quick item. I just wanted to respond to a comment that was made by resident Mark Charbot during public participation. Staff in my department has been working to review and implement changes to the procedures, policies, and notifications when condemnation is involved. Our draft policies and notices are being reviewed and finalized, and it's my expectation that I'll be able to provide the council and the community with an update to that. Probably at the next meeting, but certainly shortly.
Tim Holdeman, our Public Works Director.
Wanted to also thank members of the community that came out both for Saturday NIU Cares Days and for the Sunday. Would also identify the airport as a place where NIU Cares Day gathered and did significant work. Would let council and our community know that the bike share program at NIU is going to have a launch tomorrow. It begins at 10 a.m. with the ride off at 1 p.m. And so between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. at the Home Student Center, you can come out and get a taste of what that bike share program is going to be about. We are meeting with the downtown merchants in the morning to go over the program with them in detail and what to expect. Also, would like to let council know that letters were sent, return receipt, to the 3, 4, 5, and 600 blocks of South 2nd Street with regard, and also the Landmark Commission was notified with regard to requests by some residents to remove the remaining historical curb on South 2nd Street. We are asking those residents if they're in favor or against that, and once we have the responses, we've sent that out, and we'll take responses until May 2nd. Once we have that information, we'll come back to City Council and share that information with you.
Good.
That's all I have.
Yeah, thank you. Chris Randall, our HR Director.
No report.
And Mark Thorson, our IT Director.
No report.
Yes, Gene.
I forgot, Mayor, and I would be remiss and probably severely punished. Reminder of the community, the DeKalb Police Benevolent Protective Association has a pancake breakfast this Sunday from 8 to noon at the Knights of Columbus on East Lincoln. It's a great event. It's always well attended. Encourage folks to come out.
Are you going to flip pancakes?
You know what? I don't know if you want me to flip pancakes, but I'll be there.
Okay, thank you. Any other items for the good of the cause? If not, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.